Why is that not working?
There we go.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Why is this not working? I don't need that sound. Hey,
like you're killing dolphins or something.
Sounds like chimpanzees or something. No, that's a bird. Come on. I need to project this to the TV. Okay. Let me hit that. There we go.
I got my hotel room projection behind me. It's working out like a
dream.
Oh,
looks,
how about that?
Nice.
It looks really realistic.
That's really good. I know.
That's what I had last show.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Well, yeah, I've got somebody's wardrobe because I've got an old coat hanger behind me.
Look at that. Very nice. Is that Harbor Bridge?
Yep.
Very nice.
Taken from the Rocks, which was actually one of my favorite parts of Sydney, with all the old pubs and some really nice restaurants. Yeah. I used to love
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I used to love the Lord Nelson there at the top of the hill with its own beer. Very good.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite layovers.
It's great city. Lovely city.
Yeah. Where is it?
Sydney.
Oh, never been.
Oh, it's a super spot to go to.
Oh yeah.
It's the New York of Australia, really, because the people there are quite, brash and in your face, but heart of gold, like most Australians.
I like it. People are gold. Nothing
Australians? They're some of the rudest people I've ever met in my life. Just kidding. Just kidding. We love our Australians. I'm just trying to eat enough to keep my stomach from making noise.
Well, nice. You better suck it up then.
Yeah. So you made it, Rick.
Made it.
Now not on reserve or not on call.
Is it all right? Done. Excellent. I have until midnight.
You're back on call at midnight?
Midnight at 2:30. All the way through Thursday. I think they'll call me before then. See, the thing here is that you do all the DHL flying out of this hub, and it's all middle of the night type stuff. So I was thinking they might call me, but thank God they didn't, because it just didn't feel like sitting out the sword out there and having to wait for him to. So you fly out, you go sit in the station, unload, load, and fly right back. So, and those hours of the night are not particularly nice to be flying in. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
All right, we're good. It's all good. It's all good. Hello, everybody in the chat room. How's it hanging? There's a lag. Kind of closing some of these windows on my browser so that I don't overstress my CPU. Because I stretched my CPU once, and it really took a long time to heal.
Yeah, it does.
You look extremely overstressed as well.
Me?
Yeah, no.
You look a little windblown, that's for sure. You might want to tidy that barnet.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I just took a razor to the head.
Nice.
Good man.
Look at that.
Hello, Columbus, Carl, Mississippi. He says, hi, APG crew. Tim Needham, Cole Carl, Miss, airline pilot guy. Hey, airline. Oh, that's us. Sean is, how's it hanging? Sean says, long and loose. Dan King, Neil Landworm, Tanya W. Michael Kuipers, hello, the mayor of SQPN. Uber Frank, the awesome hero of Oshkosh. Curtis Wagner, James Balch, Tim Needham. Oh, I already said you. Okay, and whoever else. Oh, Masha, I see.
Just popped in.
Who?
Hillel.
What? Hillel. What are you doing on there? Maybe he's in. Are you in the bathroom already? And he's just he's online in the bathroom.
He's just getting ready.
Yeah, that's right.
He's sitting on the commode using his phone.
Yeah, I think that I think I hear him.
It's caught in my zipper, Jeff.
Oh,
Hate it when that happens.
that is not pleasant at all.
No.
No.
So, lots of olive oil.
Ooh.
What kind of place is this? Where are we? How does this thing work?
I'm just going to ask a question. What religion was Hillel?
Probably still is.
Yeah.
He is Jewish.
So how's he get it caught in his zipper?
What are you trying to infer there, Mister?
Well, if he's sporting some pubic hair, you could get it caught in the zipper.
Are you trying to infer that the rabbi cut off too much?
I'm not saying a word.
The rabbi, the moil was.
I was just asking. I was just asking a question. That's all.
A valid one at that.
He's my Kreplach brother.
What does that mean?
Krepla, it's kind of like a dumpling.
He's your dumpling brother.
It doesn't seem like a compliment at all.
It's like a pierogi.
My pierogi brother.
Yep.
All right. Steph is in the chat room. Well, what the heck is she doing in the chat room? She's supposed to be here on the screen.
I know.
Steph.
Probably driving home. Like a woman with her hair on fire.
Is she on her way? Did she say? I just saw that she said something. Where are you? Where are you?
Hi, guys. Sorry, I'm still at work.
Oh. Well, that's no good. Well, we'll go ahead and just start without her then, and then she'll...
Hi, Tim Needham. Tim Needham said hello to me. He's the only one that really cares that I'm here.
We all care that you're here, Dana.
No, I'm only kidding. I'm really only kidding.
Okay.
I missed you guys last week.
Yeah, I could tell. You look like you were really having a hard time there on the lake, based on the pictures that you saw.
You missed a bit. In fact,
Well,
you missed a
really,
lot.
I'm trying to use the... Do I really need to do my hair?
Yeah,
Hi,
you do.
Uber Frank. How's Steph doing?
I gotta love it. With you. That was easy.
Are barbershops not open in Georgia yet?
Well, apparently.
Not cheap ones.
He told me he got it trimmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Finally got a haircut last week. I have never been happier to get a haircut. Good Lord.
Yeah, I'm waiting still. I don't know what the back looks like.
You're fine.
But Rick, who's doing your manscaping for you?
That's that? No, that's a DIY.
DOI. Do it yourself.
Hey, different strokes for different folks. Literally.
Yeah, that's what I pay my wife for. Now where are you? You're in
Cincinnati.
No, not you. Nick, I'm trying to figure out that's
Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's right. That's for John Jester. He said he's in Hong Kong listening
Hong
to
Kong.
us. So I thought I'd put a Hong Kong background up.
Very nice.
Only you, Rick, would it. Well, you and Nick can both understand that photo. I have no clue.
Those are iconic buildings there.
Oh, the whole of the center of Hong Kong has got some fabulous.
Oh yeah.
The building I always love the most is the Connaught Building, or I guess it's still called the Connaught Building, but it has all the windows on it are like portholes. They're circular.
Yeah.
And the Chinese, when it was put up, the Chinese dubbed it the House of 1,000 Arseholes.
Really? Very nice.
Very apt.
You are alive.
Yeah, but that's, I'm sure it's after the watershed, isn't it? Do you have a watershed? Is that what you call it in the States when you're allowed to swear?
No.
Okay, there's a certain time of the day. It's usually 9:00 in the evening before you can say rude words. Really rude
Never
words.
here in the States.
Oh God, now we've got to put Jeff back where he belongs. Hang on a minute. One more. Come on, Rick. There you go.
I'm glad you know how to do that.
Rick's senior to me. He gets closer to the top.
What? Now it's all screwed
That's
up.
the case.
Yes, that's more like. Actually, that's
And hold
absolutely
on.
correct.
And then
And take out everybody.
there we go. That's the way it should look.
Why am I junior?
No. I'm junior. I'm
Left to right?
away.
Top to bottom, left to right.
Top to bottom,
Oh,
left
there
to
you
right. Now, if we do
What
it
are
in
you?
Hebrew, it would be the opposite way.
That's true.
We go right to left.
Well, if it was an Arabic show, you go top to bottom, don't you? Or is it Chinese?
That's Chinese and
Ah,
Japanese.
yeah.
Why is it I'm still hearing everybody in my speakers? I'm not supposed to. I have them muted. Huh. Oh, maybe because this is not connected for some reason. We'll be starting soon, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Why does it not see? Huh. Does not see it. It's very, very strange. Okay.
You have caught the sun a bit today, Jeff. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Get a nice glow.
Oh, thank you. I've been doing long walks on the beach. Well, there's no beach here, but
I think your hairline's starting to recede a little bit, though.
oh yeah. Well,
See the reflection off your forehead.
61 and a half.
Yeah, you need to pop out and get makeup to give you another going over.
Well, I don't have any makeup.
Makeup.
I could just turn off all the lights.
Yeah, well, Rick, that's how Rick does it.
That's all. Well, I mean, so I've got a lamp over here, got the TV on, and the windows are open, but the weather here is just gross. So it's just as light as I can get it, and the camera is particularly good. So,
How's
the
that?
camera's too close to the.
That's
you go.
very nice,
Light.
Jeff. We like it.
Is that a lot better?
you look like Deep Throat.
Maybe I should
Stephanie
have some
says
light.
you look fine, Jeff. She sucks up so well, doesn't she? God, lummy. Sucks up to the boss.
Looking for
gonna say
pay raise.
anything. Oh,
There we go. That's better.
Look, this isn't a Halloween show, is it? Have I missed out on a memo?
okay. Now I can turn off the speakers. There we go. Very good. Okay. Let's, for what it's worth, I don't, Rick, you probably still don't have, you don't have Total Recorder on your machine yet, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. So let's forego the clapping thing. So,
Okay.
And I was all ready. You're sitting right here.
well, if you want, let's just do it.
No,
No, I don't want
Right.
it.
Just for luck.
I don't want.
Okay.
I don't want to
Maybe
now.
do 426 and 3, 2, 1. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Oh, I need to go over here and make sure that Radio Rogers intro, which I just finished together, is in the appropriate place. Not yet. So here we go. Radio Roger. Let's make sure we can hear him.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy
That's
Show.
really loud in my ears. Was that loud for you all?
It was good.
No, it's bearable here, but I'm pretty deaf now. So
Wow, that was really loud.
Yeah, me too.
Huh. Hang on. Turn down the volume.
pump up the volume, pump up the volume, pump up the volume.
I know, because I had to adjust the headphone volume because I was using these and they require more juice. So these are more efficient, I guess. Okay, so I will do this and let's see. Liz, are you all set? She gives me the thumbs up. Awesome. Why don't we do this for the intro? Why don't we put up this and then we'll take that down once we start doing our intros. All right. And I think, wait, hang on. Let me make sure that I'm recording. I am recording. Okay. Very good. And back to Evernote. And now we start.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 426.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. Your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 20th of May, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Could you ride and he's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy?
In today's episode, Singapore imprisons a U.S. cargo pilot for breaking quarantine laws. An F-22 crashes near Eglin Air Force Base. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, the Ian Palmer interviews part 2. Get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 426 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in New York City. And you are watching the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. And joining me are my awesome co-hosts. First, there we go. From his mobile studio in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is a world traveler, airplane mechanic, Breitling cognoscenti, fitness hound, and international air freight captain. It's Miami Rick.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm happy to be back. Sorry I missed last episode, but I'm looking forward to another good one.
Well, we're glad you're here. And
my imagination had to get really loud, the music.
What's that?
It was so loud I couldn't even hear Rick talking.
Okay. I could hear him.
All right, I'll shut up.
All right.
It sounded the same here. Kind of instead of fading, it just increased in volume and drowned him out. But probably fine.
How's my level now? Is my level all right?
Oh, it's probably because what happens with the StreamYard thing is that it gets confused when it hears music playing in the background and doesn't know how to balance voice and whatever. So I can lower the volume on this. Let's see. Because I can barely hear it, actually.
Yeah, it's really low there.
Leaving home out on the road.
Test 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, you're fine. It wasn't your volume, Rick. It was the music, which instead of fading down, increased in volume at the point at which it would normally fade out.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not do anything to the volume. I don't know why I did that.
Well, it was just a glitch, I'm sure.
Glitch. I hate those glitches.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Maybe the Russians.
Okay. But, all right. The important thing is what I'm hearing, because that's what is being recorded. But, all right. We want everybody on the video to have a good experience, too. So, let's start this part over. I'm not going to start over from the very top. Because we haven't talked to anybody yet.
Yeah.
From his mobile studio in Cincinnati, Ohio, world traveler, airplane mechanic, Breitling cognoscenti, fitness hound, and international air freight captain, it's Miami Rick.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Happy to be back. Looking forward to another great show.
We are looking forward to it as well. And from the UK, it's a new intro music for Captain Nick. What do you think? Nah, just kidding.
Not very musical.
All right, from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London, it's Captain Nick.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for that, Jeff. Anything I thought I was going to say for an intro, and it's gone completely out of my head. But I could give you a live performance.
Good.
Podcaster. Podcaster. Good job, sir.
Awesome. And also joining us from the Northwest Atlanta suburbs, barbecue master, motorcycle rider, pleasure boat skipper, underwater photographer, and captain for a major U.S. legacy airline, Captain Dana.
What's happening, everybody? Great to be back in another fine episode that we're going to produce today.
Well, we missed you as well last week when you were out there just slaving away on the lake in your power yacht.
Yes, but I had a legitimate excuse. It was our 21st wedding anniversary, so.
Oh, very good. Well, I hope you all had a great 21st anniversary. All by yourselves. I'm sure you weren't around anybody else, right?
Yeah, we were social distancing.
Okay. Hey, our producer tells us that you need to turn your gain up a little bit, Dana.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah, a lot better.
All right, because that was almost all the way up. Now it's all the way up.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking.
With that interface, it's got to be all the way up.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Not yours, though, Rick. Oh, that's right. You're not using your interface right now. But the one you have at home, don't turn it all the way up. We can't hear you at all, actually. No, really. Didn't hear a thing you just said.
How about there? There we go. There we go. Turn the gain up. No, wait. Don't have gain.
Yeah, you don't have gain on that one. All right. Let's see. So we just introduced Dana, and I think it's now time for poor Liz is going already. All these interruptions are messing up my timing. Oh, well, let's get right back into it. All right, everybody. Great to see you all. And Steph should be joining us in a little while. She is still at work, but she should be home soon. So we look forward to hearing from her as well. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead and just go over to the news.
Stand by for news.
All right, the first item in our news notebook is Latvian drone fueled for days, goes missing, restricting airspace. Latvian authorities are hunting a 26 kilogram or 57-pound drone. That's not very heavy, is it? That went missing mid-flight, causing air traffic problems. The Aviation Authority has restricted flights below 19,500 feet or 6,000 meters, if you prefer, in the region while they search for it. Okay, thank you very much. Let me turn the volume down on this. Wow, what else could go? No, I'm not going to say that.
Please
don't.
The Aviation Authority has restricted flights below 19,500 feet, 6,000 meters if you prefer, in the region while they search for it. While officials say it is likely the drone, which took off on Saturday, has landed, it had enough fuel to fly until 1910 local time on Tuesday. Not sure when they issued this particular story, but many members of the public reported sightings, but none has been confirmed. A wayward drone just on... Oh, I should have played the drone sound, right? I probably won't be able to find it, so never mind. Yeah.
This looks like a pretty conventional remote-controlled aircraft, as opposed to a lawnmower.
Yeah. It looks like a is it a military drone, did they say? Or they haven't really said, have they?
No, but normally if it's a military drone which disappears, no one says anything because they'd rather not admit to it.
True.
Right. Plausible deniability.
Now there's a photo in this that we're looking at in our show notes, and I'm assuming that it is the drone, and it has
okay. I found it in the story. The non-military drone is understood to belong to a local unmanned aerial vehicle manufacturer, which doesn't bode well for his potential customer base, does it? I've got this great drone, folks. I'd love to show it to you, but it's gone missing.
Its endurance is so great that we were not going to see it for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Let's see. It's 3.5 meters long and 5.5 meters wide, with an airspeed of up to 43 miles per hour. It was last seen flying at about 200 meters. I guess that's the altitude it was flying at. Is that right? Yeah, that could be right. Anyway, yeah. So hopefully they'll be able to find it.
So I thought those were GPS located, and you're able to kind of always figure out where the heck they were. How do you lose a drone?
This is a low cost model. No GPS on this thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's the way they operate. Yeah, you're right.
I think the little wire that connected it to the controller snapped. Actually, considering the number of these devices, which Jeff's pretending to be a control line model pilot, and I used to do that when I was a kid as well. We're chucking an awful lot of these bits of kit up into the atmosphere, actually, and some of them are enormous, aren't they? They've got these ultra lightweight, in 100-meter wingspan, made of incredibly light material, remote aircraft that are drifting around in the stratosphere, doing, radio communications and stuff. And, if one of those goes a bit haywire, I guess they're pretty frangible.
Well, I tell you, many times flying out of in and out of bases around the world, not going to say where, but around the world, there's you often share the airport and the runways with these drones. Some of them are as big as DC-9s. They're just amazing and
whoa,
very, very expensive indeed. And they just go up and stay aloft for days. And I remember one time coming in, we landed, taxied off the runway, and I remember we landed after the drone. That's what it was. So this drone landed because I remember the military controller was telling us to what our approach speed, the lowest approach speed we could fly at was. And obviously this is a fully loaded 747, so we got flaps 30, which is the most you can have, and about 150 knots over the ground. And this thing is approaching at, I don't know, 80, 90 knots. So we're still quite a ways away from him, but still, gaining fast on him. So he told us, what's the slowest we can fly. The drone lands, and then we landed, and then as we taxied off the runway, we taxied off to the left side. The drone taxied off to the right, and they purposely kept us away from the drone. They didn't want us to get too close to it, or actually or see it too close. I don't know what the heck it was, but it's really interesting how they handle that kind of stuff. And
they probably didn't want your jet blast to completely destroy the thing.
Well, yeah, that too. But
yeah,
those
that and the pictures on Facebook, they're fascinating. I think it's incredible. These things are becoming so sophisticated and capable, and they're flying, more and more. A lot of missions we will never hear about. The civilian ones we occasionally hear about. In fact, during the crisis here, COVID crisis, they have been flying drones which were initially experimental but put them in full use, transporting specimens and test results and things from the mainland into the Isle of Wight, I believe. So, a company there was setting up an experiment, and the CIA said, "No, you can go for it now because you're fulfilling a real need." So it's great to see those things coming online.
That's right. Yeah, they're going to put us out of work though. If drones start flying freight.
Yeah, and they don't have transponders.
Not going to be good.
Well, they might put Uber out of, or the white van man out of business. I don't suppose they could replace 747s anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, yeah.
Well, you know what? As long as it happens 3.5 years from now or more, who cares?
I don't care.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I'm just
That's
kidding.
mean. That's just plain mean.
I'm just kidding. I feel for you. I really do.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do. All right. That's enough of that one. Actually, that was a lot more than I thought we were going to say about that. The second item B in our news. I always said folder, but I guess they're really called notebooks here on Evernote. American FedEx pilot imprisoned for breaking quarantine order in Singapore. And this is from The Guardian. These freight dogs, they don't follow rules at all.
Rules don't apply to us.
I know.
We laugh at the rule book.
They cut into the traffic pattern. They never stick to their speeds. They're always making you go around. Dreadful lot.
Well, speaking of poor judgment, Rick, an American cargo pilot who admitted to poor judgment in breaking a quarantine order to buy medical supplies has become the first foreigner imprisoned in Singapore for breaching. First foreigner imprisoned in Singapore. Yay. He's a first for breaching its restrictions meant to curb the coronavirus. FedEx pilot Brian Dugan Jurgen, 44 years old, from Eagle River in Alaska, was sentenced to 4 weeks on Wednesday after he pleaded guilty to leaving his hotel room for 3 hours to buy masks and a thermometer. Singapore has one of the largest outbreaks in Asia with 26,000 cases. More than 90% of those infected are foreign workers living in crowded dormitories, while the government recently began easing restrictions for the local population. The tiny city-state has strict penalties for those who breach quarantine rules, don't wear masks in public, or fail to adhere to social distancing measures. Quarantine violators face up to 6 months in jail, a fine of up to 10,000 Singapore dollars, which is about 7,000 US, or both. So, yeah,
Singapore, you don't want it. Well, it's a beautiful place. I love Singapore. I'm sure you've been there, Nick, as well. But they're
I have too.
Very, very particular with their local laws. Even chewing gum down there is something you're not allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So you have to be, just kind of, when you go to someone's house, just kind of, abide by the rules and stay out of trouble. And that's
it is a problem when someone like you, Rick, who has to visit so many countries, one after the other. You kind of lose track of where you are, and it's actually quite easy to blunder around and break a local bylaw. And you hope, generally speaking, that you just put your hands up and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jet lagged. I'm a pilot. I had forgotten where I was and apologize." But sadly, it seems that he didn't get away with it.
Yeah. So we have among our reading material, we have what are called station guides. And so these are guides that basically have, the local customs, what to expect, what to do, what not to do, contact information, hotel information, that kind of stuff. So it's a good idea to, I'm pretty sure, I'm sure airlines, other airlines, international airlines do the same. It's a good idea to kind of review those and, see what's in store for you if you don't walk down the yellow brick road there. So it's just a good idea. Just kind of know what you're walking into. And don't stray off.
Yep. All right. Well, hopefully he'll have learned his lesson and had fun in jail. No,
yeah, he'll have stories about that one time he was in the can. So it's a.
All right. Item C. Drone hits. Oh, thank you. My director is right on it. Item C. Whoa. Those darn drones again. Drone nearly hits Blue Angels during flyover on the 15th of May, not too long ago. Let's see. A recent America Strong flyover by the U.S. Navy Blue Angels in Detroit, Michigan on Tuesday, May 12th. Okay. Could have ended in a midair collision when a remotely piloted camera drone flew dangerously close to the 6 FA-18 Hornets as they flew over buildings in the city's downtown area. This is from, I don't know. I forgot to put where that was from. Hang on. I'll know. Looks like
downtown Detroit.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the article that I'm reading.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's Aviationist. There we go.
Ah.
The video began to surface on social media Wednesday, May 12th, the day after the Blue Angels America Strong flyover in Detroit. So I guess it was the 11th that they did the flyover. The original video posted to YouTube included a number of different angles, with the camera drone appearing momentarily in some of the shots. The final shot shows the Blue Angel 6 aircraft wedge formation flying extremely close to the camera drone as they pass overhead at speed. The left wing, likely the number 5 aircraft in the formation, is very close to the camera drone in the shot. Most aerial drones are equipped with wide-angle lenses, making the proximity of the drone to the Blue Angel formation seen in the video extremely close. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has established specific rules for safe camera drone operation. One requirement says, do not operate your drone in a careless or reckless manner. Drone activities for commercial use, such as real estate survey and listing work, require a license from the FAA. Operators must pass the FAA test and obtain a Part 107 drone operation certification. Basic drone operation rules also include not operating a drone near other aircraft. I guess we do that. What else? It requires that not only operating close or near other aircraft, but not above 400 feet. Guess what? The Blue Angels formation, they were not below 400 feet. So obviously the drone was much higher than that. And anyway, I don't know if you all have subscribed to or listened to C.W. Lemoyne. He is both a Navy and Air Force fighter pilot. And he has a YouTube channel that he does shows every week or sometimes a couple of times a week.
Okay, he's a 7.3 driver for American too.
There you go. He's also an airline pilot, and recently interviewed by Montour, that channel. So anyway, I'll put a link to his video where he talks about this dangerous drone encounter with the Blue Angel flyover, so you can kind of hear his analysis. Now, some people were thinking that maybe it was just a fake video, but most people, I think, are surmising that the thing is actually a real situation. So, the drone's not only flying too close to airplanes, but it's also flying over a populated area, which is not supposed to do, and it's flying above 400 feet. So at least 3 of the Part 107 rules are being violated here.
Right, because you're not supposed to fly below 500 feet on aircraft. So 400 feet for a drone, that gives you 100 feet separation. And clearly, if he got as close as he did to the jet, then he must have been above 400. It's just irresponsible. Come on.
Oh, and I'm pretty certain that any time the Angels or any of the other formation teams does a show, even if it's just a flight blast like this, they will have put out no terms closing the airspace to anything, including drones. So you can give that buzzer another press.
It'd be a TFR too, temporary flight restrictions.
Yeah. It sounds like they've got a name for this guy. I'm only hoping they can find him, because he seems to have done this sort of thing before. So I hope they give him a pretty good rap on the knuckles.
Or something else.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect the Blues would have coped with it. The Angels would have coped with it very well had it come in amongst the formation, because, of course, they do a lot of displays near beaches. There are going to be birds around there, and I'm sure a few of them have had a bird pass through the formation or even hit people in the formation. So I suspect they're quite capable of dealing with it, but it's just an unnecessary risk you want to try and avoid.
Well, I think a drone would have a lot more mass. Well, not necessarily mass, but not be as soft as a bird would be.
Now, how sturdy are those canopies, Nick, on the 18?
They're actually quite flexible. It is possible. I'm trying to think whether the guy was killed or not. There was a case of a bird hitting a canopy. The canopy flexed in, struck the pilot with a force enough to damage his neck or knock him unconscious. The aircraft crashed, and when they They tried to work out why he had been killed. And it turned out that they found evidence of a bird strike on top of the canopy and surmised that this is what had happened. So they're very strong, but they're flexible. So they're pretty clever stuff.
Yeah. I remember on the going into now that you're kind of pivoting here from drones to bird strikes. I remember flying into JFK one evening. I think I've told the story before. We were radar vectors to join the ILS to whatever runway it was, and just on that basis, as we began rolling out, it was like an oversized bug hit our windshield. And it was this bird, and it hit the captain's side, so he couldn't see out the window anymore. So he transferred controls. I landed, and then that sparked a question in my mind. I'm going, how much abuse can these windshields take? And I started digging into the books. And I couldn't find a figure for the speed at which these, at least in the 7.6, the windshields are rated. And I finally, a little obscure chapter, a little passage there on the AMM, the maintenance manual, I found a speed of 307 knots indicated at standard atmosphere. That is what the windshields are rated at. So ever since then, either on climb or descent, I always limit my climb speed to 300 knots, transition to Mach, and then on the descent, Mach, transition to 300 knots, and that'll keep you should keep you safe should you ever encounter a bird at altitude.
I guess it depends whether the chicken that hits your windscreen is soft or frozen.
Yeah, I heard about the study. Yeah, they couldn't figure out what the heck was going on.
Yeah. I think they're calibrated against a sort of mid-sized bird, but if you were to hit an albatross or one of those big hooper swans that can fly up to 25,000 feet.
I thought you were talking about Jimmy Buffett and his albatross.
Get one of those would be bad.
Yeah,
there are some pretty big birds out there. I mean, a pelican would really spoil your day, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would ruin your day.
And the worst is the rubber chickens.
Those are bad.
All right.
Dana's got one, actually. I'm surprised he doesn't have it to hand.
Throwing it at the camera. See how the camera takes it.
It's back in the drawer of his bedside cabinet. Is that where
I'm going to leave that one alone.
We're not going to go there.
I was going to say something, but I decided it's a family show, folks.
You're a very nice chap, yeah.
All right. Item D. Oh, before we move on, just a quick time. A lot of people, Rick, are saying that you need to get closer to your microphone. It's your
closer.
Yeah, your volume is not as great as everybody else's.
Sorry about that.
Hey, no problem. We want to hear you. All right. Item D. F-22 crashes near Eglin Air Force Base. Pilot ejected safely. Again, this is from the Aviationist. An F-22 assigned to the 43rd Fighter Squadron, part of the 325th Fighter Wing, based at Eglin Air Force Base in near Fort Walton Beach, Florida, crashed at approximately 9:15 local time on May 15th. The location of the accident was 12 miles northeast of Eglin Air Force Base main base on the test and training range. This from the statement says the pilot ejected safely from the aircraft and has been transported to the 96th Medical Group Hospital on Eglin for evaluation and observation. He is currently in stable condition. The name of the pilot has not been released. According to first reports, the aircraft was involved in an American strong flyover. However, the official statement released by Eglin Air Force Base just says that the Raptor was flying a training mission. And it was not actually that flyover that day was canceled, come to learn. Safety investigators are continuing to evaluate the wreckage of the F-22 Raptor that crashed Friday morning. And they added a little bit of information. I just picked up this today. They said that it was indeed a training mission. There were no armaments or munitions. In other words, missiles and bombs and stuff like that on the jet when it crashed. And that's about all we know. We're not sure exactly what caused the aircraft to crash. So we'll kind of keep our eyes and ears.
Glad the
open.
pilot's good, but that's an expensive jet.
Very expensive jet.
Very expensive.
Well, you know what? And I didn't put it in the news today, but I think it was this morning or yesterday. An F-35 crashed out of Eglin Air Force Base as
Really?
well. Yeah. And let's see. Maybe I can
Have
just
they
quickly...
just got too many of these things or what?
No. And the F-30, I was just thinking about the expense. F-22s are expensive, but the F-35 is what, like 2 or 3 times as much as an F-22?
That much? Really? I thought it was the other way around.
Oh, I thought the well, I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know what the price tags are, but I thought the F-35 was more expensive than the F-22.
I have no idea, really. But
Yeah.
it's $500 million, right? Or right about there. Not good.
Yeah.
Well, they always plan to lose a few. It's very unlikely to get through a year without someone having to get rid of one.
Well, Main Man Micah says that the F-35 crashed in England. Okay, I did not see that, but okay, that's good information. And the F-22 is more expensive, so you're right, Rick.
Okay.
Well, once we add the bill for repairing our country, you'll probably find the F-35 crash was more expensive.
Uh-oh.
Well, it crashed in England. It's bound to have hit, it could have damaged the dirt.
Oh, man.
Well, it looks like in both cases, wow, I'm having trouble today. Main Man Micah says that the pilot bailed out successfully in the F-35 and the F-22 as well. So I think some broken bones with the F-22 pilot, but everybody survived both of these crashes. Just that the airplanes didn't. All right. And then speaking of airplane crashes and kind of staying in that whole military aviation theme, the last item in the news, a Canadian Forces Snowbirds, actually, the Canadian Forces Snowbirds jet crashes in Kamloops, British Columbia, killing one and injuring the other. And for some reason, I'm getting a telephone call. So I'll be right back. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Victim identified as Captain Jen Casey, a public affairs officer with the Snowbirds. A witness captured the moments before a Canadian Forces Snowbirds jet crashed in Kamloops. The Canadian Forces Snowbirds cross-country tour to raise people's spirits during the COVID-19 pandemic turned to tragedy Sunday when one of its planes plunged into the ground in Kamloops, British Columbia, killing one member and injuring the other. The Snowbirds jet crashed shortly after takeoff and burst into flames in the front yard of a house. I don't know if you were all able to see the video.
Yeah.
Looked like it was a 2-ship. I think it was like the 2 jets that go ahead of the main demonstration team to kind of set things up a couple hours before they were taking off together. And I believe it was the wingman all of a sudden, shortly after takeoff, just immediately pulls up pretty abruptly and then kind of does a wing over maneuver. And then when the airplane was upright, the ignition was initiated, ejection was initiated, and one survived and one didn't. And Jen Casey was the one that perished. The pilot of the CT-114 Tudor aircraft, Captain Richard McDougall, sustained serious injuries in the crash, but they are not considered life-threatening. Jen Casey, a public affairs officer, died in the crash. Happened before noon Pacific time, shortly after the jet took off. Okay, we just talked about that. And video shows 2 puffs of black smoke coming from the plane. It appears to show at least one person ejecting. No, it showed 2. There was some other video that was closer and almost right underneath the departure path of the aircraft. And they say, I have not heard it or watched it, but they say that there was a kind of a sound like a pop. So it kind of indicates it's a single engine trainer that they've configured for this demonstration team. And they're thinking that there was some kind of either engine reduction in thrust or perhaps just an engine failure. And
how close is that to the T-37 you flew?
T-37 was a twin jet.
Okay.
But Yeah, this one's single engine,
Okay,
but I bet that it probably still had more thrust than the T-37 does. Yeah, the two jets in the T-37 are non-afterburning. They're centrifugal flow compressor engines. We called it an ice machine. It was funny because we go out there and fly some sorties, and if anybody said anything about icing, the T-38s would be immediately grounded because they're very sensitive to icing, and the T-37s would be out there all day long just making ice cubes. So that's the bad thing about the centrifugal flow compressor jets are that they don't produce a lot of power. But the good thing is they're really, really hardy engines. So.
Oh, they are. See, the thing with that is that you can only, I think the maximum number of compressor stages you can have is in a centrifugal flow compressor tap engine is 2. Because any higher than that, the compression ratio just goes down the tubes.
Yeah.
And you start actually losing power the more stages you try to put in there. So yeah, they just limit them to 2.
It's very the jets look very similar the way they're designed, with a pretty straight wing and side by side, not front and back kind of seating for primary training, and that works out better, I think, to be right next to the person that you're training with instead of like one in front of the other.
Tandem, right?
Yeah.
The look of the jet is very similar to the Jet Provost Mark V that I used when I was training.
Yeah.
And the intakes, the layout, the cockpit, the canopy, the whole 9 yards. And I don't think it's a new airplane by any means. So, it's a great shame. And this accident really reflects something that happened to the Red Arrows not that long ago when they had an engine. I think it was an engine problem or perhaps a practice engine failure. Either way, the pilot lost control, and sadly, the passenger, which is what the poor lady in this accident would have been, their public affairs officer, was killed. And we get incredibly well trained as aircrew in the escape systems and what to do. And although I've absolutely no doubt she was given training, it won't have been quite as intensive as someone who does it all day, every day.
I was going to say it was made by Bombardier, but I would have been wrong if I'd said that. It's actually made by Canadair.
I'm glad I interrupted you then.
Yeah, me too. So I had a little chance to actually look that up on Wikipedia. I was just seeing when the thing was made. Its first flight was 13 January 1960.
Oh, wow.
And retired as a trainer in the year 2000. So I guess they're just keeping these around for the demonstration team.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So our thoughts and prayers go to Miss Jen Casey and her family and friends, and etc. And hopefully we'll find out what went wrong in this particular incident. And with that, guess what? It's time for the Getting to Know You segment. Getting to like you. All right. How are we doing? Is Steph getting close to arriving home yet? Do we know? I haven't been paying attention.
Well, she's left, but I don't know how long the journey is. I'm guessing without too much traffic.
On her way, but not too close yet. Okay. Well, we'll just do a special Getting to Know You segment for Steph when she arrives, because we all want to know what's going on with her. But what we can say, she says 15 minutes. Yay. Okay, Steph, keep your hands on the wheel. It's raining in the Charlotte area as well. Okay, be safe.
Yeah.
Rick, because we did not, both you and Dana, we did not see either of you last show. And so I'm sure you have some stuff to tell us about, get us all caught up. What's been up?
Well, I just basically on days off, really. And the morning of the show at 3 a.m. local time, Phoenix, I got a call from scheduling saying if I was interested in picking up a flight, just a morning stay, morning's worth of flying up to Portland for a pretty good amount of coin. I was like, well, that's doing some work at home and remodeling a bunch of stuff. So I figured, yep, well, we'll do it. So I did that. Went up to Portland for the day. Commercial back down, was back home by I don't know, 1:30 or 2 p.m. And then went on down to the cactus farm to keep buying cacti because we're redoing the front of the house there. So just basically been working on the house. I headed out to work yesterday. So I'm on the road now till the end of the month. Have the first couple of days in reserve here in Cincinnati, and then I have a couple of flights to down to Tampa, up to BWI, then across to Portland again. So that should tie a nice bow on it.
Very good. Very good. Oh, by the way, just to keep us above the 50%, yeah, Micah said the F-35 crashed in England, but it actually Eglin Air Force Base. So maybe that's the confusion there. Eglin, England. They look kind of the same.
Yeah.
But apparently from the chat room, Carl, Columbus, Mississippi, said the F-35 fighter jet crashed at Eglin Air Force Base. So just want to make sure that we keep it on track and above 50% here.
Very nice.
2 within 4 days. 2 crashes in 4 days.
Yeah. Not very good. So very good. So you headed up to Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon?
Oregon.
Oh, Oregon. Okay.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon.
I was going to say, if you went up to Portland, Maine, you could have given Micah a call, gotten together. Well, actually, you would have had to stay away. So never mind.
But I tell you, it's interesting because it's so you fly to Portland, and the first time I went to Portland, actually, the first time I flew into Portland was during my OE here on the 7.6, a couple of weeks ago. And I knew that they do a lot of the painting for Boeing jets down in Portland, but I had no idea it was such a big operation. And it was kind of interesting to see. Portland is not particularly a huge airport, but it's interesting seeing these different tales from airliners from around the world. I saw a couple of LL 787s and a 787 from the Ukrainian airline. I forget the name of the airline. I think it's Ukrainian. And I thought it's interesting to see, seeing these airliners parked there, thinking, well, they don't fly out here. And then I thought, then it clicked. I was like, oh, they paint them down here, and then they fly them up the river to Everett. So interesting little place. And as you're coming in, the arrival procedure takes you. Well, the first time I flew in there, flew in from BWI. As you're coming in, you fly right next to Mount Hood.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The point there's called Hood. And as you begin coming down and you go up the river, your base to final turn, when you're landing to the east, takes you right over a little airport that a little tiny runway there with a lot of GA traffic. So I thought, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for this because I can see a little bit of conflict happening there every once in a while. So. But yeah, very lovely place. I loved it.
It seems like every time I fly into Portland, Oregon, usually from Seattle, there's always some kind of an abnormal situation, right, Dana?
Yeah, all the time. We do it quite regularly in a virtual world.
Yeah, and that's one of the profiles in the simulator to do some kind of the line training.
You guys train in Portland? Ah, very nice.
Yeah,
places that we'd never operate.
Yeah, not in the 88 and 90, but back in the day, flew the 7.2 all the time between those two airports. But anyway, so when you talked about Portland, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't like that place because there's always something going wrong.
Some type of event that's going to pop out, and you're going to be.
Or if it's a loft, nothing may happen. So you never know.
Yeah, it might be something nice and easy and simple, and you go, really? That's it? Okay.
That's it. You signed off.
Actually, I was out there just what was it, earlier this year for my cousin's wife's memorial, and got to ride the jump seat on what was the airplane I was on? I think it was a 7.6, flying just past Mount Hood. It brought back a lot of memories. It used to fly up and down the West Coast. I had all those mountain peaks memorized, all the way down. So. Been a while since I've done that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. That morning we saw Hood. We saw St. Helens, I think it is.
Mount St. Helens.
And right next to it, Rainier, and the distance is just absolutely gorgeous.
Nice clear day. All right, Captain Nick, how have you been, sir?
Pretty good, thank you very much indeed. Yeah. I'm gonna forever regret doing that.
Yes. I think so.
He sent that in our private iMessaging group, and I thought, ooh,
Yes,
I might be able to do something with that.
Private messaging group.
Not so much anymore, Nick.
Semi-private.
Famous. You get a Grammy for that.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I've been on social media a great deal, and mainly to answer the many. Well, there've actually been hundreds of messages of sympathy from our listeners and from friends and family, of course. But I do my best to answer every single one after my father's death. So for those who I haven't had a chance to get to your message or to acknowledge it personally, and I have tried to get to everyone, but sometimes it's so hard on the social medias because messages get scrolled out of view and you miss a few. So I just wanted to thank everybody. So many people said that they were very grateful that Pop had given us those interviews, and I too will treasure those. So thank you very much indeed for that, and just for your warm wishes and your hope that we'll cope with his passing easily, and I'm sure we will. But I just think I'm very touched. So thank you very much indeed for that. And on that theme, I had a visit today from another captain. Now, we're allowed to meet in open air spaces so long as we maintain social distancing nowadays. So you can, and you're also allowed to have one other person in your vicinity. So there's my nominated one other person, and there's Captain Nige there in my garden in his socks. Because he'd just peeled off all his motorcycling gear, which you can see piled up behind him, and he'd ridden his Harley. I'm sure Dana would approve.
Absolutely. For
a few hours down from where he lived to bring some beer, and he even bought his own sandwiches. So we made our sandwiches. He bought his and had a beer together and had a nice old chat while I mowed the lawn. Because there's my lawnmower.
Yeah,
there.
like you're mowing the lawn.
That's the way I always.
I don't think you're mowing the lawn there.
it kind of resembles a drone lawnmower.
Like those Roombas, I think they're called.
Yeah.
This one's a German one. Jawohl. So it's made by Works. So assuming it's German, it sounds very German. I got the phone app out and I pressed go. So I'm fully responsible for mowing the lawn.
Okay.
No, it was lovely to see Nige. I wondered, I don't know if he's made it home yet. I hope he's home safe. He's a biker, has been a biker for many years, longer than me for sure. So he's pretty good on the old machine. So it was great to see him. Nothing else much has happened really. Life is just quiet and normal. I'm writing plain tales, but I seem to have a lot in the bank now, so that's great.
Keep on going.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Very good. Dana, so you mentioned right at the beginning that you were absent because of a very important occasion last weekend.
Yeah, we got to celebrate our 21st wedding anniversary, and in fact, we've been together this coming March, so about another 7 months, 8 months from now. No, 9 months from now. We will have been together 30 years, Julie and I. So we invited some friends out in the boat and took them out, and we at sunset, I decided to get up and say a little piece about how special my lovely bride is and how proud I am and happy I am, and I do it all over again, and then proceeded to play our wedding song, and we danced as the sun went down. And it was really something special. And I actually, which I never do, by the way, I never do this because I believe most women out there are going to hate me, but that's all right. I don't ever buy flowers. But this year I did. I happened to be in Costco and saw this beautiful bunch of different color roses, 24 of them, and I bought them, and they actually turned out to be spectacularly beautiful. The bulbs, the petals opened up to beautiful, big roses. So I'm actually kind of proud of that. Other than that, really, there's nothing good in my aviation world. I haven't flown in forever. And of course, my future is very much in the air. As a matter of fact, depending on when we record the next show or how fast they do the processing, I will find out my fate sometime next week, I think, if not by the following week, as to where I will be going. But I spent better part of 2 hours yesterday redoing my displacement choices, and it took me, I have 40 displacement choices because I just don't know what's going to end up happening and how it's going to work out and pan out. So I basically kind of did it as if I can by chance stay as captain, I would do it in Atlanta. Not likely going to happen. And then I did it based on seniority. So everybody knows how much I dislike the 737, but I actually may not have much of a choice if I prefer not to fly international. And even then, I may not even have a choice. So I kind of did it based on seniority. So it's kind of a roll of the dice. I would prefer not to do the 7-1 because I'm kind of burnt out on the regional stuff. I've been flying that my entire career. So the 717 to go back as a first officer would be the largest amount of pay cut that I could take at the airline. So I just don't want to do that. So I'm going to try to preserve some type of financial stability by choosing the right seat on a larger piece of equipment, including maybe even the 7576. Just depends on where my seniority falls when they get to me. So I spent a lot of time. And of course, just as I was about to hit submit and I'm reviewing everything, what does the program do? Time's out.
Gotta love it.
So I had to go back through. I wrote my lesson the first time, so then I went back through and redid everything, kept on adjusting things, and actually in my haste discovered I actually printed everything out so I could look it over. In my haste, I discovered I had made an error, and thank God I had printed out. But I even have my bid in for the 350 as a first officer. I have my bid in for the 330 as a first officer, 76400. All of those actually I can hold more than likely in Atlanta, well, at least the 76400, depending on how it all pans out. But that's what I've been doing. That's my excitement. Keep it short and sweet.
Make sure you put a bid in for that 777 first officer.
Yes, I did.
That's being retired. So a lot of people have been asking and are concerned for both of us, Dana, and the fact that our fleet is being retired rapidly. Like, this is pretty much the next couple of weeks is it for passenger service at Acme Airlines for the MD-88 and MD-90 jets. So what happens is that don't worry, Dana and I are still going to be paid. And unless you get furloughed here, you get paid. And it's based on, even if you're not there are going to be some pilots in this displacement bid that will be unassigned because there are just not enough jets in the fleet to fly. But Acme is keeping them on, and they'll be paid the
Sorry.
I'm going to have to edit all that out.
Yeah, but it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I know, but because you guys are making so much noise, I can't hear myself talking. Anyway, so what was I saying? At Acme Airlines, unless you're furloughed, you will be making the reserve guarantee on the lowest paying position, which would be the Boeing 717, which is really, as we all know, another mad dog or an angry puppy or whatever you want to call it, an MD-95. So, I'm happy that people are concerned about, the fact that we're not flying the Mad Dog anymore, but we're going to be okay. And both Dana and I, especially myself, but Dana also has enough seniority to avoid being furloughed, at least
for now.
For now, yeah. But I think you're going to be safe. But and a lot of people are wondering about that whole process. And so, as Dana alluded to, there's a displacement bid, and we put our preferences in. The bid actually opened up on Friday, and it closes a week from next Monday. So it's
Memorial
a 10-day
Day
period. That the thing is open, and then it's going to take a while. They feed all this stuff into a big computer, and it's probably going to take a while to kind of do all the number crunching and get people, about where they're supposed to be.
And they plug it into a Commodore 64. So
yeah, that's going to take even longer
time because that's where technology tends to be.
Yeah, that's that used to be true, but not so much anymore. I think that Acme has really stepped up the technology game quite a bit in the last few years. Anyway,
it's true.
So you put in, your choices for what you want to displace to, and then based on your seniority and based on, as Dana mentioned, the reason why he has so many bid preferences in is because you can say, well, I wouldn't mind flying for me, for instance, the 757, 767, 767 ER category, but I don't want to be anything less than 50% seniority in that category in Atlanta. So you can specify where you want, what your cutoff is going to be, and you can just go crazy and put in all kinds of different choices and scenarios and that kind of thing. That's why that's why it takes so long for the big giant computer to kind of do all the number crunching. But anyway, I think right now, unless I go back in there to change things, I'll just do the easiest and path of least resistance and downgrade to the 717, and then kind of see what happens in the next year after all the dust settles and we kind of have a better idea how quickly the economy is going to recover and how quickly the travel industry will recover. And then it's very likely, there are rumors out there that the 717 is also being considered for retirement. So if that happens, then I'll have maybe a better idea of which category or what fleet to go to after that for my last few years at Acme Airlines. So
and I'm kind of surprised you're not going after the 7576 now, because I know you wanted to fly it and there's a lot of openings on it per se.
Yeah, but it's also shrinking. It's also shrinking, actually, the fleet. And so, yeah, I don't know. I still may go that way. I haven't made my final decision yet. Yes.
Especially pay-wise.
Pay, I don't really care. I can make up for whatever difference in pay rate there is because I'd be very senior on the 717. So in fact, right now I'd be number 3 on it. So I know that will change now that the 88 and 90 fleet is being retired, but I'll still be probably top 10% seniority on it.
That's why we respond to Matt Thorne here. Yes, it's known as a triple nickel. He says 5-day trips, 5-leg days, $5 less an hour. That's about right.
Yeah.
But triple nickel.
Well, Matt, not for me. I'm not going to be flying 5-day trips, 5-leg days.
Oh,
so don't worry. That will be not the kind of trip that I'll be flying.
And I get where you're coming from, Jeff, about us being able to make up some time. But philosophically, for me, and this is just me and speaking for me only, if there are going to be pilots that are going to be furloughed, I will not work any extra, because if they need us to work extra, that means they need to have the pilots on the street, not at the company. So yeah, I know there are a lot of people don't think that way, but I will certainly not be picking up anything extra because of just philosophically based on that fact.
Well, even if I didn't, I can, I'm in the downhill phase of my career right now. So it's, the money is not so critical. All my kids are out of college. So, that's a pay raise in itself. All right. Oh, looks like Steph will be joining us soon. In the meantime, let me just get you caught up with me. I flew a 3-day trip over the weekend, picked that up, and left on Friday, non-revved up to Pittsburgh. I was there Friday night and Saturday night, and then came home one leg on Sunday morning. And then I did a Philly turn, a Philadelphia turn from Atlanta on Monday. My first officer on the Philly turn is someone who is on reserve, and he picked up this trip on a green slip, we call it. And he wanted to make sure that he could fly the airplane at least one last time before he goes on, or we all go on reserve next month, and there are no airplanes to fly. So this was, he thinks, will be his last trip on the jet. And so when we came back into Atlanta, he was flying, and I kind of communicated with the Atlanta tower controller, and thought I'd share this with you. We had a little fun.
Slow tower, Delta 1895, we're on a visual approach, runway 8 left.
Delta 1895, line of tower wind 1506, runway 8 left, clear to land.
Clear to land on runway 8 left, Delta 1895. And this is Delta 1895. This is probably the last landing for this co-pilot sitting next to me here on this jet. So if you guys could give us a good review.
Delta 1895, roger.
And say it's good no matter what it is.
I'll let you know. He's looking good so far. Delta 1895. The crosswind correction was impressive. The flare was spot on. I think you did a pretty good job. Delta 1895 at Bravo 10, cross runway 8 right, join echo to the ramp on this frequency.
At Bravo 10, cross 8 right, and stay with you on this frequency, Delta 1895. And thanks for the grading score there.
No problem, A+.
It was really nice in here too.
And Delta 1895, is it really your last flight?
Probably so. I'm not on the schedule the rest of this month, and I think they're going to be all parked by the end of the month. So that was probably it.
Well, congratulations, and hope you have a great future from here.
Thank you so much.
I tried to find a fire truck for you, but they're a little late notice for me.
That would have been nice, like at the approach end, to kind of just flare right underneath it.
I'll have to remember that, see if we can coordinate something like that next time.
Now, clearly everybody was confused there because they kept using the wrong call sign.
I was going to mention that. I know who those guys are. I know of Acme 1895, but
yeah. I guess I'm going to have to do some editing before I release the. I didn't even think of it until now. It's like, oh yeah, wait a minute.
Still, it sounded great. I'm guessing air traffic's pretty quiet at the moment.
Yes, very quiet. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. If it was normal Atlanta operations, wouldn't have time to do stuff like that. But the airplane that landed ahead of us was probably at the gate by the time we got onto the tower frequency. So very, very quiet. And by the way, that was also compressed in time. It would have taken probably an extra few minutes to go through all that. But anyway, had a good time, and enjoyed flying with my first officer there. That's the first time that I'd ever flown with him, and is a really, really good pilot. So good luck to him. He's probably going to be one of those that is unassigned. Hopefully he'll be able to avoid being furloughed, but the way the numbers are working out, he'll be very lucky if he's actually assigned any airplane at all after this displacement. But, in time, he'll be back with us and going strong. So, hey, I just noticed we have somebody that is joining us that wasn't here right away. And that is, of course, the IPA connoisseur, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff.
And all the other stuff.
That picture really screams IPA connoisseur or not, but I was just going to sneak in here and just listen. You guys have been doing a great job on the show so far. So,
thanks.
No, I apologize for my tardiness. Actually, this is about, a little later than I planned. I was thinking about 3:30 after I looked at my schedule today. I didn't quite realize we had set the time so early for this afternoon. Yeah, and then things always go to plan while you're at work, so right on time for the finish there. No, that didn't work out, unfortunately.
Never
It was,
does.
and it always is the very last thing that seems to screw things up. Like the day went so smoothly. Everything was on time. No real snags, nothing unusual going on. And then the last patient of the day, there was some sort of miscommunication with their ride, and they had to go back to the car, and it took forever. And yeah, so
We can identify because in our world, it always happens on the last flight home.
right.
Always.
It's never the very first.
No.
Never in the middle of the day where you could make up some time. It's always I just was sitting around for a good 35-40 minutes waiting. So my apologies, but
Hey, no problem.
yeah. What have I been up to this week? Last weekend, actually not a whole lot. I just really had a nice kind of quiet weekend. I'm trying to think, did I do anything even remotely interesting?
Well, I know what you did on Saturday.
What did I do? What was this past week?
The recording of the last episode.
That's right. We did that. See, it even hasn't even been that long. Like
I know.
I'm trying to think what happened in that time, and not much. I didn't do anything. Saturday that was the day that was pretty hot because I did the Jeep top. We recorded the show.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday was also pretty warm and nice.
It's supposed to be Lake Day Sunday.
Yeah,
right?
it was Lake Day. We got in the lake, my neighbor and I, and it was the air was warm. The water was not.
Oh.
It's still not warmed up very much. It was quite chilly, and it was breezier on Sunday. So spent most of the afternoon kind of freezing my butt off in the lake, but it was actually worth it. It was nice. I read a book and had a nice conversation with my brother for about an hour and a half, and nice conversation with my neighbor. We're solving all the world's problems while floating on the lake and consuming some hard, or what are they? The Trulies and the White Claws.
I was going to say you need a little more antifreeze in your veins if you're going to be in the lake right now.
Yeah, I don't have enough. Yeah, it's a little chilly in the water still, and it's pouring rain today, so that's not helping the water temperature for Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be cold.
I'm not going to be in the lake this weekend. I think I'm going to be out doing some flying.
Oh, cool.
So I have an invitation to play first officer with the local skydiving group, and they have a new to them aircraft, a Kodiak, which I've actually seen, and it's reasonable for a jump plane. The thing is like brand new. It's only 5 years old. It's got all advanced avionics in it. It's got similar to what the Cirrus actually has in it, the Garmin product there, which is the Garmin Perspective. I forget what they call it in the Kodiak, but very similar to that. So
is that the one that looks kind of like a Cessna Caravan?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I saw one of them at Oshkosh last
probably
July.
I'm sure there was one there.
Nice looking.
I've been sent a POH, and that's my bedtime reading for the rest of the week.
Oh boy.
So
will there be a test?
No.
That's good.
Because I'm really just there to hang out and ride along for the most part. But I mean, if I'm going to be sitting up front, I should probably know something about the aircraft.
Yep.
Generally a good idea.
Generally a good idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I figured there wouldn't be a heck of a lot to talk about on the Getting to Know Us segment, at least for the three of us that did the show on Saturday.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, all I'll say is that it seems like it's pretty close to business as usual here for me. It's been really, really busy at work again all of a sudden. People are really trying to get back in and take care of stuff that they've put off, and we're still trying to make sure that we do that in a safe manner, make sure everything is cleaned and sanitized and not having too many overlapping patients and people. So it's a little bit of a challenge.
Patients.
Well, just, not too many people hanging around in the same place, the waiting room and at the checkout counter and things like that.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Well, nothing else for me. I think next week I have another one of those 3-day trips that is not going to be a 3-day trip because the Grand Rapids stuff is still not happening. So much like the one that I did earlier this week on Monday, I'll be flying up to Philadelphia and then back to Atlanta. And that might be the last flight that I'll have in the Mad Dog fleet at Acme. So I'll let you know. There's a possibility I could pick up something like another day trip or whatever before the end of the month, but we'll see. And with that, I think it's now time for the coffee vote. Perfect time.
No thanks.
I love coffee. I can't sing.
I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right, the Coffee Fund is it's a word from our sponsors. Those sponsors are those fine folks that contribute to the show via the Airline Pilot Guy Coffee Fund. You can become part of the Coffee Fund cadre or the Coffee Bar Club, whichever you prefer. I don't care what you call them. I call them awesome. And since the last episode, using the Coffee Fund Classic method, recurring payments from Chris Randall and David Lieb. And no new patrons since the last episode, which was only a few days ago. So that's cool. So if you want to become part of this great group of folks to financially support the podcast, please head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. We will too. Wow. I normally don't get finished with the Coffee Fund this quickly. I usually have a lot more to say. But
we'll just enjoy the music for a moment.
Listen, yes, to Jeff Smith.
Sorry, it gives me a minute. Gives me a minute to get all the feedback pulled up because I haven't done that yet.
There you go.
Captain, incoming message.
Love that. Thank you, Nick, for making the new bumper.
That's okay. It's a picture
overlays.
of Steph.
Well, that is Steph. Oh, I never noticed that.
Yeah, I noticed.
blowing me out with feedback, blowing my ears out. All right.
Not the most flattering profile. Anyway.
I like it too.
Is that right?
I like it too.
It works for the purpose.
All right. The first item in our feedback notebook is from Ham Radio Jim. And actually, it was, this is for Captain Nick. He says, Nick, so sorry to hear of your father's passing. Thank you for sharing a little bit of his life with us. What a wonderful father you have and such a loving son. 7-3, Ham Radio Jim. Whiskey 2, November, Sierra, Foxtrot.
Isn't that lovely? In the radio world, we call it going silent key. But the old man, actually, he probably would have been pretty good on the Morse key in his old days because, even the pilots used to be able to do that. And certainly when he was a first officer without a two-man crew, flying those old DC-2s, he might well have been doing that, although I think even they had radio operators. But no, that's very nice of you, Jim. Thank you very much indeed. And he sent a lovely link to a YouTube video, which is one of those virtual choir performances where, they get everyone to send in their singing of a famous song, and then somebody with an awful lot of spare time, because there must have been, I don't know, close on 50 or so of these wonderful singers, puts it all together, takes out all the latency, matches them all up, and then turns it into a beautiful piece of music. It was singing a rendition of Waltzing Matilda, which was very much an old soldier's song from the First World War and even the Second World War, and it's a lovely old folk song of Australia that I don't think there's Australian alive who can't sing it. So that's how well known it is, and of course it's especially poignant because it was a tribute to the Anzacs, which stands for Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, the Commonwealth nations that helped the United Kingdom. In fact, did so much to help Britain survive during the bad days of the war. And of course, then we were lucky enough to be helped by the New World when you guys joined him. So it really was a fearsome time, and They every year on Anzac Day, which is one of the Australia Memorial Days, they start off with a parade at dawn, and then the old man always used to love Anzac Day, and he was out there walking with the veterans or marching with the veterans until only very recently, last few years, he was just a little too infirm, and for a while they drove him around inside a Willys Jeep, which Steph would approve of, and an old World War II Jeep, and
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
last time,
Those are cool.
yeah, absolutely. And I was lucky enough to escort him to one which was very local, because he couldn't even manage that towards the end. So that was a great day.
Yeah. The link to that YouTube will be in the show notes. It's a beautiful rendition of Waltzy Matilda. Going along the same theme, with condolences for your father's passing. This is from Sam. And he said, "Good morning, Nick. I was very saddened to hear of the death of your father on the latest APG. My partner's father is currently suffering from brain cancer in Auckland, so you have my deepest sympathy. Your Plain Tales interviews with your father were amongst my favorite episodes. He lived an incredible life, and while it's only a small commiseration, 97 is a great innings. I hope you are doing well. My thoughts are with you, and I will raise a toast to Andy Anderson later today. Kind regards, Sam."
That's so kind of you, Sam, and I thank you very much indeed. Andy's journey is over, but it sounds like your father still has a fight on his hands. So I think all of us would like to wish him the best with that, and good luck, basically.
Yeah. We also received some audio feedback from Brent in Australia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brent Grapes. I'm a long-time listener to the APG, but I've never had the courage to submit any feedback until now. When I heard the news that Captain Nick's father had passed away, I really wanted to share my story of meeting this incredible man and pay just my own small tribute to him. A few years back, I actually met Captain Nick and his dad out at Jandakot Airport, which is the general aviation airport here in Perth, Western Australia. And immediately I was just struck by how much Captain Nick and his father were just true gentlemen. They were witty, generous. They were just really fun people to be around. And we chatted for quite a few hours about aviation, and they were just so generous with their time and their knowledge and all of their stories. I'm a musician. I'm a trumpeter like Captain Jeff. I now work in an orchestra. I'm a classical musician. But before I joined the orchestra, I was actually a member of the Australian Army Band Corps. And when I heard that Andy Anderson had passed away, I really wanted to pay my respects to the military service that he put in for our country. In most Commonwealth countries, we pay tribute to our servicemen and women with 2 bugle calls. And I'd like to share this music in honour of a fallen airman and father who is very dear to the whole APG community. So the first bugle call that we would play is called The Last Post. It represents the end of the day, and it shows that it's time for the soldier to lay down and rest. This is followed by a short period of silence and reflection, and then we play a second bugle call, which is called Rouse. And Rouse signifies the start of a new day. It literally means to the soldiers, get out of bed. And it's a reminder for them to get to work. But as a memorial, Rouse represents the dawn of a new day. It's an opportunity for those of us left to pay thanks that we can wake up and live in freedom. And it's an opportunity to thank those servicemen who have paid the ultimate price. Before the bugle sounds, we read a short poem called The Ode of Remembrance, and it's by the poet Lawrence Binion. I'd like to share this service with you as a tribute to an airman, a husband, and a father. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.
Wow.
Very touching.
Yeah. Cheers, Brent. I've got a real.
Yeah.
Well,
it just gets me.
I think it gave us all goosebumps and
That was
chills,
amazing.
And it was absolutely beautiful.
Just unbelievable.
I do need to. He brought us down below the 50% there because he said he was a trumpet player like Captain Jeff. And I'm sorry, Brent, you're like so many levels above where I am as a trumpet player. So you're wrong. You're not a trumpet player like me. You're so amazingly good. So, and that was very touching.
Yeah, I think I've got my voice back. Brent was so kind. He said he would like to play at Andy's funeral, and of course the restrictions and the fact that it all happened so quickly. There was a very small private cremation, and we're going to try and have a tribute to Andy, a memorial at his old life-saving club on a beautiful beach, Cottesloe Beach. That'll happen end of this year, beginning of next year, somewhere around that, when we can all travel again and everything works. Brent's agreed to come along and play that. There's not going to be a dry eye in the house. Really appreciate that, Brent. It was great meeting you at Jandakot. Loved it. And you're right, Jeff. He's not just any trumpet player. I met a couple of real aficionados of classical music a few days after we met Brent, and we were having a few beers at a pub with Andy and Carol, and we're all there together. And I just happened to mention we've met him, and they were aghast, and they said, "Wow, you met Brent Grapes? He's fantastic. Oh, we just love him." You realize he's the principal trumpet of the Western Australian Symphony Orchestra, and he is just one of the most remarkable trumpet players, in the world. And I was going, wow, wow, that's impressive. And it was really their reaction to the fact that we'd actually met him that stunned me more than anything else. And it's so nice that he listens to the show, and absolutely fabulous. So thank you very much indeed, Brent.
Yeah, that just hearing the tone of that bugle was just amazing. Very, very talented. Very talented. Oh, wow.
How do you continue after that? I mean, it's just wow.
I'm just glad that Captain Nick tried to say something, because I wasn't able to get anything out of my sound box. So voice box. All right. Well, to keep it down under, we received this from Glaucus a little while ago, and we kind of answered it sort of, but there was a lingering question here for Miami Rick that we didn't get a chance to ask. And so he said, a final quick question to Miami Rick. The saying goes that we should never meet our idols, but you managed to do that by flying the 747. Was the experience in line with your expectations? Is she really a nice machine to fly? I still love to fly in it as a passenger, but the QF ones were getting a bit long in the tooth.
Oh, the 747. I tell you, I think no boy or girl out there that dreams of flying airplanes, imagines or hopes or doesn't hope to, get to fly the 747 someday or somehow. And the sad part is that as time goes on, the chances are less and less, to fly these big airplanes. And so, absolutely for me, growing up, with my gay Skyward, it was always a dream of mine to get to fly her. So when I finally got to do it, first I had to pinch myself to see if I was really sitting there, and then getting acquainted with that airplane. Now I was lucky because I had a little bit of hindsight, and I could compare the 747 to other Boeing airplanes. Having flown the 5, the 6, and the 777. the 747 it's in a class all by itself. It's just it's such a huge airplane, but at the same time, it's so responsive. When you introduce a roll, you obviously at low speed you're deflecting inboard and outboard ailerons on both wings. But not only that, you're also deploying a whole row of roll spoilers. And that make the control input so snappy, and just the speed of that airplane is just unbelievable. How you take off, the second you go above 10,000 feet and the airplane pitches over, you basically leave everyone behind in your dust, because what I would do is I would command a climb speed of 350 knots to Mach 0.86, Mach 0.87 sometimes, just because we could do it,
Mhm.
and to say that you've been able to do that, it's quite amazing. And then just seeing another 7.4 in flight, when you see another 4 plume contrail coming at you, and it's another 7.4, and just to see that closure rate of almost Mach 2 and feel that little bump, and just reminds yourself of how big that thing is. And then landing it is really the easiest airplane to land because of the sheer size of it. The wingspan on the Dash 8 is 225 feet. So when you're coming into land, you enter ground effect at 1/2 the wingspan. So it's about 110 feet that you start feeling that cushion of air underneath you. And all you have to do is just kind of ride that out, hold your attitude, a little bit of power, and just kind of feel the energy of the airplane, and just slowly bring the power back and let her settle. Such an easy airplane to land too. So, and the whole thing kind of ties together as you unstrap your lap belt and your shoulder harnesses, and you button her up for the night. You head downstairs to the main deck, and then once again down to the tarmac, and you look behind you, and you're like, Jesus, is that what I was strapped onto just now? And because it's like flying a city block. So, oh, absolutely, it was everything I thought it would be, and then some. It's I hope to fly her again, hopefully in the next couple of years.
Well, to kind of tie it even more together, because we were just talking about the passing of Nick's father, Andy. I believe that was his favorite airplane, right? The
Oh, for sure.
747? Yeah.
He considered it the absolute pinnacle of his career. He loved it.
Yeah. So it's
very lucky as a casual observer and outsider, I've never flown on the 747, but when I stepped foot on, I got a tour of one at the gate, and one of the things that I noticed, the most prevalent thing that I noticed, is when you walk on the airplane, whenever you walk on any other aircraft, you're always looking and see almost like a tube formation, right? It looks like a tube because the walls come up and they're curved above you. And the 747, the first thing I noticed when I walked in is that the walls are essentially straight.
Yep.
So that was that to me. I mean, I'm amiss in regretting I never got a chance to fly on the airplane now that Acme Red is effectively retired their 747 fleet. I probably will never have that opportunity, but that's one of my observations whenever I saw the aircraft.
No, it's just as you say, and that was one of the big selling points of the 747. In fact, Joe Sutter mentioned that the fact that it really belies the size of the thing, because as you sit up, by a window on the lower deck, there's barely any curvature to that sidewall. And another thing that I remember, the first time I set foot on a 7.4 freighter was actually when I was still flying the 777, and I was down in Quito, down there in South America, doing a flower run from Quito back up to Miami, and one of the Acme Giants 7.4s parked next to us. And I was like, what the hell? I'll go down there, check it out. And so I, went down the stairs in my 777 across, and then up the stairs to the 7.4, and then up to the main deck, introduced myself. And then the captain brought me upstairs. I met the rest of the guys, and I remember walking into the flight deck, November 496 Mike Charlie, I'll never forget. And I sat up front, and just just if you've ever sat in the, well, obviously, we all have because we're all pilots, but if you've ever sat in the flight deck of an airplane, of an airliner, you're pretty high up off the ground to begin with. You sit in the flight deck of a 747 and it's like you're in a fourth or fifth story. It's just insane how high off the ground you are. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a little tight to be the flight deck of such a big airplane. But then you forget that you are on the second story and at the very, very, little point of the airplane there. So it's very aerodynamic, very, very tight quarters and so high off the ground that I just kept thinking, how the heck do these guys even land this thing? Because I just couldn't imagine the sight picture being it right. But, just like everything else, you get to do it and all of a sudden it becomes easy till you don't do it anymore. So I hope to one day go back because it was a lot of fun. Great places. I got to see the world in that airplane and flying the Dream Lifter. It was like being a celebrity everywhere you went. There was cameras and people waving. So it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, I think that you'll probably have another chance to fly it before your career is over.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think they're going anywhere for cargo stuff anytime soon.
Yeah, they'll be around.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of rubber dog shit to move around.
and I hear Hong Kong's supposed to go, so we'll be all right.
All right, I guess it's time for a beer then.
There you go.
Alcoholic
Well, I've got one.
Mine's right behind me. I had to put it in the freezer when I got here because it was sitting out. I neglected to do that last night. I've been too busy. I know. Hopefully it's cold.
Well, we have a short piece of audio feedback that we played on an earlier show, but we're going to play it again because maybe Rick can give some kind of an answer for this. Not sure. It's a tough question.
Hello, everybody. Pip here. Just out and about trying to work off some of my massively increased beer intake for these last 6 weeks. Terrible, really. Anyway, just trying to burn off some calories here. Listen, I got a question for you. I'm rather hoping Rick is on the show because I'd quite like to hear his thoughts on this. And it's a question about seniority. At my airline and at most other airlines, I'm curious to hear what happens at yours. If you have a pilot, let's say he's been in the company a few years, he's got a little bit of seniority, and then he leaves the company. He resigns and he goes elsewhere. And then some years later, let's say 4 years later, he decides to come back to your company. Does he come back with his original seniority? Now, I'm guessing that the answer would be no. Certainly at my outfit, if someone leaves and comes back, then they'll start at the bottom of the seniority pile. And I'm guessing it's the same at yours. So perhaps you can just answer that question. And then the second part of that question is this. How is it, and God bless him, I love him dearly, but how is it that Rick has come back into the Acme seniority list at the same level at that which he left? I think there's something very dodgy going on there. And if I was Nick or Dana, I'd be writing a very strongly worded letter to my APG union rep. It seems like there's some dodgy deals going on there at the upper levels of APG management. Maybe some brown envelopes full of cash being exchanged under table somewhere. Not quite sure how that works. Anyway, hoping everyone is well and looking forward to better times ahead where we can all meet up and give each other a big sloppy BFF podcast hug. See you later.
That was a good one. Well, first of all, Pip, it was a leave of absence for operational reasons. The crew would record at 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and I'd be in Kazakhstan somewhere, and internet connection out of my hut wasn't very well. Well, it wasn't very good. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, no. I mean, it's interesting because that question kind of plays a little bit of sadly with what's going on right now in the industry. So a lot of our well, I'm not say a lot, but some of our pilots, a few of them, have left for passenger outfits not too long ago, actually. Inside the last year and a half. And now they're looking at coming back. And sadly, it's not how it works in the airlines. So you leave, and when you come back without your seniority. Obviously, we have your track record. We know the kind of person you are. I don't imagine you'd go through the entire screening process and all that, but you have to think about the fact that first you left of your own volition. It was something that you wanted to do, and then there's guys and gals ahead of you that have now moved up a couple seniority numbers and are not willing to give them back. So,
right,
simple as that.
That's the way. At least that's the way it works here in the new world. The way our seniority setup is, you start right from the bottom, if there's a space for you.
That big caveat right there to begin with.
And anyway, your explanation of relative seniority at Acme Air was spot on. That's basically what I said in your absence. So anyway.
Yeah. I'm still looking for my union rep.
Nick,
No
you
union
have to
cheer,
pay
baby.
HR more money.
Exactly. You have to kick back more of your salary, more of your monthly salary. That's how it works.
Well, I already give her 30%. How much does she need?
100%.
What?
Basically. I'm sorry. It's just
I'm sorry. This is the way it is.
the way it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody's having fun with that. So, all right. Thomas sent in some audio feedback regarding the survival of freight carriers. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, APG guys, gals, everybody. This is Thomas, and I wanted to send a piece of feedback in regards to a conversation that Rick and Nick had during the news segment on the last episode, which is currently episode 423 when this reaches you. And that was in regards to increased pressure potentially being put on dedicated freight carriers by legacy airlines, as legacy airlines try to find their place in a COVID and potentially now, in the near-ish future, a more or less post-COVID world. And, are they really going to be putting more pressure on these dedicated freight carriers because they're finding that the legacy airlines have a space in freight? And as somebody who worked a dedicated freight ramp for about 6 months, I have a little bit of a perspective that I think maybe Rick could attest to, and maybe he disagrees with or agrees with, but I'd like to get his input either way, and just some food for thought. And I think really what it comes down to is the legacy carriers are missing something that some of them never had, and that a lot of them gave up a long time ago, and that is the 747. Specifically, the 747, even if they did have it, is a 747 that couldn't do one of the most vital things that I think really makes the 747 the queen of the freight industry specifically. And that is the nose load capability that comes with a factory built freighter. And what I say by that is not a Boeing converted freighter, a BCF, or there are some other third-party conversions out there as well, but not a freighter that used to be an airliner that even the legacy carriers who do have them could conceivably go and create if they wanted. But these Boeing 400 and 800Fs that come out of the factory intended for life as a freighter, with the capability of nose loading as a rampy, you're able to do so much more. There's a lot more freedom in the way that you can move cargo on and off the aircraft, as far as we can shunt pallets forward. We can store pallets just off the nose on a K-loader, which allows us to pull the tail off the aircraft or pull the tail forward and reload, which is a huge deal if you're doing a partial load, because you have to manage that CG and make sure you keep it on or forward of the main gear. If you get after that main gear and your CG shifts, you can absolutely stand 747 on its tail. Thankfully, I did not work for a company that did that. I worked for a company that loaded several different airlines. We worked with wide body, narrow body, 747, as well as the little narrow body variants that I'd rather not talk about because they weren't nearly as much fun. But even an Airbus for you, Nick, there was a narrow body Airbus in there every once in a while. But what we did the most and what I worked with the most was on the main floor of the 7.4s. And the difference between loading a freighter that does and doesn't have that nose loading capability is immense. And I think it is something that's understated because nobody really thinks about it. And I think Rick would be the one to attest to it. But the ability that we have to turn around an aircraft when we can load through the nose is undoubtedly shorter. We don't raise the nose on every flight. It's not necessary on every flight. But when we need to, having that extra flexibility is really, really cool and really, really helpful because we can put that freight where we need it faster and more efficiently and more safely. And also, there's a lot of critical infrastructure parts out there that are not built to be ULD friendly. They are not built to be air freight friendly. And what that means is you see some weird ULD configurations, always safe, always built to spec. In fact, the carriers that contracted with the outfit Rick flies for were probably some of my strictest load masters I got the pleasure of working with. But they would have to load through the nose. There would be no other way to get this stuff where it needed to be on time if it were not for those 400 or 800 Fs. And really I think it, as weird as it sounds, just being able to load through the nose of an aircraft and not having another aircraft out there that has that capability, that's a market that the freight industry has always had cornered and will continue to have cornered. So as much as our legacy carriers can pick up the freight from, that vast majority of what we think about, which is the FedEx and the UPS and, these pre-built ULDs of the tapered ULDs that fit on the underbelly and are really just full of cardboard boxes and packages and things. But when it comes down to the heavy freight, to the vehicles, and it comes down to things like that, we ship on 7.4s, and that is where the freight really goes. And not just that, but the dedicated 7.4 freighters really do make an impact on the industry. So I sound like I'm sold out on the 7.4, maybe because out of all the aircraft I loaded, it's quite legitimately my favorite aircraft to work on. And that was a huge part of it because it was the easiest one to turn around, and it had the most flexibility in the way that the floor was laid out and the way that the aircraft was set up. It was built to do work. So I think that is really the crux of it for me. The 747 is so capable that it's going to get these freight dedicated carriers through a time where the legacy carriers definitely are able to impinge on some of their profits for the more simple freight, shall we say. But anyway, I'm sure Rick can say quite a bit more about it, and I would leave it to him. But I digress.
Are you kidding? Rick can't say a lot about anything.
No, I have absolutely nothing to say about that. Let's just move on.
We haven't heard the Ricketts once yet.
That is true.
Well, I agree with him 100% there, and I tell you, having flown,
that's a little premature on the Ricketts.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Really
premature.
You got to give me 10 minutes
activation.
No, I think it's perfect.
Having
the second the 747 answer we've had today, so start them straight away.
That's true. You're quite right, Nick. Well, but seriously, are the having flown both the 7.4 freighter and the Boeing converted freighter, and then on the other hand the Boeing 777 freighter, which is it's just the 777. Kinda, it's got the wing and engine and main landing gear of the 300 ER with the fuselage of the 200, but obviously you don't have the nose loading capability. I remember flying. Where were we going? We were going down to Brazil somewhere out of Miami, and I remember walking out of the. This is when I used to fly for Acme South. I remember walking out of the operations building and seeing this huge loader with these. They were drill bits for oil exploration, and I remember these guys trying to fit these drill. I mean, obviously they fit, and then we took them down there, but watching these guys working their butts off trying to get these drill bits lined up the right way on that side door in the 777. And then once we land and, flying down there, I think the whole time, man, this is going to be, it's going to take them a little while to get this load off the jet. And indeed it did. and contrasting that, comparing that to how easy it is to load and unload a 747. I mean, you land, you open the nose door there, and inside of 2 hours you can have an entire 747 unloaded and loaded back on again about the next hour or so. So turnaround time really is quick. And just as you said, the 747 is very, very forgiving when it comes to shifting center of gravity issues when loading and unloading the airplane. But to counteract some of that, I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes they'll actually put a tail stand on the 747 or on airports down in particularly I've seen this a lot in China, where you park and then they'll throw a chain around the nose strut of the jet to basically anchor it down to the ground to keep the airplane from tipping on its tail if the loaders somehow mess up the load and unloading procedure. But he's right. The loading and unloading of the 747 through the nose door is a non-event. It just happens so quickly that it's a breeze, really.
Don't they sometimes put like a 737 under the tail just to make sure it doesn't?
Yeah, just to wedge, just wedge it in there, make sure they know. But,
the appropriate use of a 737.
Well, it's usually 320s, but
they've all got all those Maxes sitting around doing nothing. It's the perfect job for them.
I was gonna say, I think the 73 might be a little bit more sturdy than the.
I was going to say the TTL stand that we have available would be much better for it now.
The T-tail stand?
Yes.
They're all going to the desert anyway, so
so it'll be a perfect use for our airplane. T-tail stand.
That's true. No, but it's just never ceases to amaze me that this thing's been around since 1969, and we're well into the 21st century, and this thing's still being produced. And looking at Flight Radar 24, the number of 747s in the air is just nothing but 747s lately. In that corridor between Tokyo and Hong Kong and Incheon and Alaska, it's like it's 747 highway there. It's nothing but those jets flying around. So they'll be around for a while, just like Steffi says. I think I'll have a chance to fly them again, hopefully here in the next couple of years.
I got the impression that Thomas, who sent in that audio feedback, really likes the 747.
I think so. Oh, and he was talking about ULDs. ULDs are unit load devices, and these are these cans that are. So you have ULDs for the main deck and ULDs for the cargo, the under the belly cargo area. It's all that really is just these cans where you basically load in warehouses, and all you really do is you bring these ULDs out, and then they fit in the fuselage of the airplane. So you're not actually loading cargo directly onto the airplane. You do it in a warehouse. You weigh it, you stack them properly, and all that. And then when you load the airplane up, you do it in a certain sequence to maintain the center of gravity at a certain place. And that's one of the things we look at on the load sheet there before we sign. Make sure that the airplane's center of gravity and the load sequence is correct and all that. Because one, for safety, but two, you want the airplane to be a little tail heavy, the center of gravity to be a little aft for fuel economy and other factors. So just one of the things we look at there.
Nice cans.
Exactly, nice cans.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Thomas. Hope that answered your question. I believe it did. 7, Thomas or Tomas. Hey, Jeff and APG crew, longtime listener from the Netherlands, started somewhere in the upper 200s episodes when I was training for my instrument rating. Had a very long drive to the airport, and your news and stories made it so much more fun. When I started listening, Rick was a bit mythical, Loch Ness Monster style, talked about a lot, but never seen or heard. Okay. Oh, I see. Because
see what he did there.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome that he's back. His knowledge and style of explaining is great to have on the show. I've since gotten a CPL, multi-engine, and dreaded European ATPL theory exams done. Woohoo! That's a lot. That's a lot of work, isn't it?
It's a ton of exams.
14, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm training to become an instructor. But the COVID-19 situation has sort of put a stop to that because we can't fly more than one person in the aircraft. So I've made an attempt at teaching for the cameras and uploading it to YouTube to get some practice. Would love to hear your feedback or from some of the CFIs in your audience. And then he gave us a link to his YouTube video, and that will be in the show notes. So please check it out. Give Tomas some feedback regarding how he did with his video.
I would have thought if he was good enough, he could just put the student in the aircraft and he could have a walkie-talkie and he could talk him through it.
Yeah, don't touch that. No.
yeah.
You laugh. That's how they talk. People who are learning to skydive down under canopy with walkie-talkies.
Really?
On their, yeah.
I thought they used loud hailers.
Yeah, well, that too.
Pull the left one. No, other left.
No, the other left.
The other left. Your other left.
Sorry, you were facing the other direction. My bad.
Yeah, they just strap on a little walkie-talkie, and then the instructor gets to the ground first and talks you down.
Excellent.
I don't know. I remember the first time I signed up my first student to go do his first his solo.
Terrifying.
I hope he got this. I hope he got. I mean, he did, but it's. I don't know. That first time you sign someone off to go do something, that's a little weird. But he did all right. Overshot final by about a quarter of a mile. But hey,
plenty. Yeah, well, plenty of room to correct that and bring it back on in.
Brought it back around, landed the touch and go, came back around. It was.
I think we used to say that he stalked the runway using all available cover.
My first solo student did the same thing. Unfortunately, it brought him over into the T-38 pattern, and there was a midair and loss of life. But, yeah.
Well, you're bound to lose a few, Jeff.
You gotta lose a few.
Win some, lose some.
It was hard. It was my first, but
I'm sure you got over it. A few beers in the
next day. It was a new day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like nothing happened.
All right.
That's why we sit on the ground and they fly solo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
All right. Item 8. This is from Crispo Piloto. And he has some audio feedback for us. And here we go.
Hello again, APG crew. It's your friend Crispo Piloto back again with some more audio feedback. Today I was listening to episode 421 about wake turbulence, and Dana's comment about, I think it was a 7-1 that he mentioned that has more wake turbulence than he would expect. It reminded me of a comment from my captain today as we were following a Gulf Stream down the final approach course. He commented to me that the Boeing 757 has a much more severe wake turbulence than its weight class would than you would expect from that weight, to the extent that it actually caused a Gulf Stream to crash and killed everyone on board. So they decided to call the 757 a heavy as far as wake turbulence separation goes in order to keep that from happening again. I didn't fact check this, so you might want to check on that before you air this, just in case I drop you below your 50%. I'd hate to do that to you. But I found it to be very interesting, and just the two things kind of ran together. I heard them both in the same day. Found it interesting that both the 7-1 and 7-5 have, worse wake turbulence than you would expect. So, yeah, just thought I'd send that in to you guys. Thought it might interest you. Blue skies, tailwinds, and, well, I hope you get to fly, actually.
Well, some of us have been able to. And Crispo Piloto, just letting you know that, unfortunately, the APG fact checkers have been absent without leave for quite some time, unfortunately. But I did do a little bit of fact checking your captain. It is true that a 757 did turn over and cause the crash of a business jet back in 1993 at John Wayne Airport, KSNA. But it was not a Gulfstream; it was a West Wind, and then Israeli Aircraft Corporation bought that West Wind. Actually, no, I guess it was an Israeli Aircraft Industries West Wind that actually crashed. I'm sorry, I was thinking it might be a Jet Commander. It was operated by Martin Aviation, and it was flying from Laverne, California to Santa Ana, and it looks like both the Boeing 757 and the West Wind were sequenced for visual approaches behind a beach. And before being cleared for the visual approach, the West Wind was closing 3.5 miles behind the 757 on a converging course, which means, of course, if you're on a converging course, you're going to actually that distance is going to decrease. The 757 and West Wind crews were told to slow to 150 knots. The 757 slowed below 150 and was high on final approach with a 5.6 degree descent. The West Wind continued to converge about 2.1 miles behind the 757 on a 3-degree approach. ATC did not specifically advise, by the way, this was a night visual approach, was not required by ATC handbook to advise the West Wind pilots that they were behind a Boeing 757. The captain of the West Wind did discuss possible wake turbulence, and he flew the ILS at 1 dot high, which is a technique that a lot of us use to avoid wake turbulence. Noted the closeness to the 757 and indicated there should be no problem. Yeah, famous last words. While descending through approximately 1,100 feet, the West Wind encountered wake turbulence from the 757, rolled into a steep descent and crashed. And I think there were 5 on board the West Wind, including the then-time CEO of In-N-Out Burgers. I didn't know that until I was reading about this just recently. There have been, and there were actually a few other events, crashes caused by wake turbulence behind a 757. So back then, and until relatively recently, the 757 was classified as a heavy for wake turbulence criteria, and that meant at least 5 miles in trail behind a 757. But in recent years, I don't know, it's been a few years now, they recategorized wake turbulence separation criteria, RECAT they called it, or they call it. And now it really depends on what kind of wake turbulence classification your airplane is. And right now, for an airplane like the Mad Dog, which is a category C for wake turbulence criteria, if we're behind a 757 or any other heavy, I'm not talking about super heavies or super jumbos, minimum spacing for wake turbulence is 4 nautical miles. But anyway, I have the little bit of information about RECAT wake turbulence criteria, and also a little bit of information about that crash at John Wayne back in 1993, and that'll be in the show notes. Wow, as I said, the West Wind pilot was doing the right thing. However, the 757 was kind of aggravating the situation because I guess when they were told to slow down, a lot of times what we'll do, especially on a visual approach, is decrease our descent rate and slow down as quickly as we can, and then start down. And what that does is it ends up making you a little bit high on your approach. So you have a steeper approach, and the West Wind behind them only 2.1 miles. I could definitely see how that could have resulted in a
no, that's exactly right, because it's something that even pilots that fly these things, and I've flown with a few of them, don't seem to understand that these airplanes don't go down and slow down at the same time. So there's a little bit of a depending on the airplane that you're flying, there's a little bit of a technique of how to do that, whether you're doing it visually or you're doing it on autopilot. What I like to do sometimes is when I find myself having to slow down rather quickly, say we're doing a Airbus talk is open descent. You guys call it clamp, I think it is, and Boeing it's called flight level change. When you're flying the aircraft through the autopilot and flight level change modes, you're basically pitching for whatever speed you have selected. So as you go down through 10,000 feet, the flight management system is not going to bring the nose up, put the speed down at 250, and then continue the descent. It'll if you leave it alone, the airplane will just go through 10,000 feet at whatever speed you're doing above 250, and you'll very likely be violated because you're supposed to fly 250 below 10. So what I do is when I have to get down quick and then I have to decelerate quickly to keep going down is I'll get to, let's say I want to decelerate to 250 below 10. I'll get to about 11,000 feet, and then I'll go to vertical speed and introduce a vertical speed mode of about 300 feet a minute descent. That'll bring the nose of the airplane up And then at the same time, I will bring the selected speed down to 250 knots, let the airspeed bleed to 250, and then re-engage flight level change and keep going down. Because as I said, and as Jeff said, these airplanes do not slow down and go down at the same. It's really, really hard. And airplanes like the 747, you have to, not only that, you have to also keep in mind the mass, the sheer mass of these airplanes, the inertia. So you either go down or you slow down. You can't do both.
So, Nick, how many biz jets did you flip over and make crash behind your
I lost count.
340? You lost count.
Yeah.
I mean, after the first 10 or so, just
yeah. I mean, to be truthful, at Heathrow, by the time I, was at the point of retiring, they had a completely different system. And it wasn't based on your weight category at all. In fact, it was getting so sophisticated, their time-based separation, that they needed to know not only your aircraft type, but your subset. So the 74, 200, 300, 400, etc. Same for the Airbuses, 300 or 600. And they were going to refine them even more. A lot of it depends upon your actual landing weight, and they were going to start introducing that factor in so that they could finesse the weight turbulence required to a really fine degree. And I think it is the future because, quite honestly, the broadband weight categories are pretty crude way of separating aircraft, as is the distance. I mean, they're pretty crude amounts, and they don't really take into account the conditions in the air, how quickly the wake dissipates, whether it's one of those perfect days where it will just sit and hover in front of you, or it's a day where it's perfectly safe. It'll be disrupted by mechanical turbulence of the air, all these factors. And Adam, of course, who's one of the great friends of the show, is very closely associated with the development of this.
That's why I'm suspicious about that whole system.
What? Because Adam's in charge. Yeah, well, I
It's a
don't
very
blame
clever-
you. Have you
it's a
seen
clever
how he
system,
dresses?
I know.
He very natty dresser. I
He's
don't know
very
where he
natty.
gets the money for all those waistcoats he has.
I don't know. And and they got a couple Teslas.
Yeah, I know that too.
Makes you think, huh?
It does.
the good life in ATC.
It must be.
I mean, we're all clearly in the wrong profession, myself included.
Anyway, it's a very clever, smart system developed in the UK and at Heathrow, I guess. And I would suspect that that's the kind of thing that we're going to start seeing everywhere in the world at some point.
I think it's particularly at airports where it makes financial sense to introduce it, where you're close to maximum capacity and you just want to make it safer and more efficient to feed those aircraft in.
One of the things that we always joked around about, somebody was asking in the chat room, Neil, I believe. So what exactly about the 757, made it throw out such a larger wake based on?
Ugly.
No, it's it's one of the most beautiful airplanes out there.
Boeing.
I
Lots
think
of
it
weight.
must have
the air used to jump out of the way.
No, you're thinking of an Airbus here, but
a higher wing loading, I think, is what caused that to happen. But we always joke around because it used to be we'd always used to have like extra spacing behind 757s, and now we're getting clear for takeoff when the 757 is still on the runway ahead of us. I'm thinking, well, I guess they don't produce any more wake like they used to.
No, that was years ago.
That was before.
That was before.
No
Now-
one crashed for ages now, so it's
Yeah,
you
it's
back
fine.
up again.
Anyway, okay. Well, that was a great feedback and a great question. And guess what time it is? It is time for us to end the show. Oh, no, wait. No, that's not it.
Totally.
Almost. It is now time for this week's installment of the Plain Tales. And this is a great 4-part, I believe you said, Nick, interview.
That's right. Yep. 4
And
parts.
this is part number 2 of the 4-part series of Ian Palmer. Here we go.
Old Pilots Plain Tales. The Ian Palmer Interviews, Part 2. Thanks very much indeed for coming and speaking to us again, Ian, in this, that is part 2 of what I suspect will be 4 parts of your interview. We left the last story at the point at which you were going to move into civil aviation. How did you achieve that?
Well, I was quite obviously very focused on what I wanted to do regarding flying, and I kind of knew the ultimate aim where I'd like to get to, and that image was the image of sitting on the seat of the Boeing 747 as we went off to Boston. So that was the ultimate aim. And speaking to my friend who was the captain on that flight, we were discussing flying schools, which was the best option. And I think around that time we decided that to go on an integrated course of training possibly was rather the best course of action. So we spoke about it, and I decided at that point that British Aerospace flight training in Jerez would be where my future lay as far as flight training. So I went to Jerez. They just started in Jerez, actually. The school previously was in Prestwick, and I was one of the first courses there. And this was during a time where they switched to the JAR requirements from the CAA. So
whereabouts is this flying school?
This is in Jerez, in southwest Spain.
Oh, Spain. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, which is a beautiful climate for flying, of course. So I think the problems they had was getting guys finished through the course of training in Prestwick because the weather in Scotland, because the weather was so poor. So they moved everything down to Jerez in southwest Spain. And that's where I started. And, I was basically underconfident when it came to flying at that point, and didn't realize that I could actually do it and achieve what I wanted to achieve. I was with guys there who had been to Trinity College in Dublin. These guys, one of the guys on my course was doing a degree in aeronautical engineering, was simultaneously doing his ATPL exams.
Good Lord.
Super bright guy. And this was
sounds like a bit of an overachiever.
A little bit that way. Yeah, there were a few of the guys there were. It was very competitive, and there were 17 people on the course when I joined or wanted to be pilots, and 5 of us graduated. So they either got chopped or they decided themselves, this is not what I can do. So it was quite challenging. So I with basically no education at the time, although that being said, I did sort of go back and go to school before we went there in order to prepare and get my head around what was to be expected of me. I eventually did graduate from British Aerospace, but my timing, and being a drummer, of course, you'd expect it to be pretty good. My timing was not quite so good because September the 11th, 2001 had happened as we were doing our final set of exams. So we all came out of this last exam, and I remember it was a human performance and limitations exam, one of the ones which everyone assumed at the time was one of the easier exams, and we was really happy. Great to walk into the TV room to see the events of 9/11 unfolding, and it very quickly dawned on us that maybe we're not going to get a job. After that had happened, there was a massive downturn in the aviation sector. So,
well, it was. Let me ask you: was the flying school linked to an airline, or were you doing this and then just throwing yourself onto the open market?
No, my dad was really supportive. My parents were really supportive, so I was self-funded through the course.
So you're self-funded, and wow, and so you really needed to queue up with all the other pilots and hopefully get a job somewhere. And now there were none to be had.
And and I think a lot of us now, as you will maybe relate, Nick, we have people who contact us about how did you get into the airline world? What did you do in order to get your first job? And I don't think any two people have the same course, actually. Everyone has a slightly different path as to how it works out. So my path was that I decided to become a flying instructor. So I was a flying...
Oh, at the same school?
No, sorry, no. This was in Wolverhampton at a place called Halfpenny Green, a lovely, quaint little little airfield, which was fantastic for the early days of learning to basically be the captain of your own light aircraft. And these were some of the happiest days, I think, of my 20 years of flying. So, I graduated from British Aerospace in 2001 and very quickly then did the instructor's rating, and I was flying a PA-28. And I remember now actually having all of these people come along, the public, to do these, what they call trial lessons. So we'd take off, and the great thing about Hatley Green Airport is that if you fly to the south, if you turn left and you see some big houses, well, it stands a good chance you're probably in Birmingham's controlled airspace. But if you turn right, well, you can't go wrong because you're straight over Shropshire and towards Wales. So where it's the open FIR, so you can really do whatever you want to do, which was great for me and for doing the instructing and for the students. So I used to take the guys when they used to come for their induction or their trial lesson straight out and fly down the River Severn and see if I could get them to find Worcester.
Excellent.
And then we'd fly overhead Worcester and fly back. But that was a great experience. But I realized very quickly that, it was a great stepping stone, but I wondered how I would get to the next level with it. And what I did was, what the flying school decided to do was they wanted to get into corporate aviation, which was something, of course, which I never really considered. But I thought, well, thank you very much. We'll go along with this. And I went to Italy to learn to fly the Piaggio 180, which is a fantastic corporate aeroplane. It's a pusher propeller. It's got these Pratt & Whitney PT6 engines, but it's a super high performance turboprop.
A single engine?
No, it's a twin engine aircraft.
So one at the front, one at the back?
No, so it's got it's a mid-wing. Yeah. So the PT6 is attached to the wing, but it's a pusher propeller.
Oh,
so the propeller was at the back. But it also had what they call a forward wing, which it wasn't a control surface. So it's not a canard as maybe some of the military aircraft would have had. So this was just a forward wing. But it was great because for the passengers, and it would take sort of 6 people in the passenger cabin, but they could stand up in this aeroplane, which was great because it was a mid-wing and a wing was at the back with the forward wing obviously at the front. So so that was a great experience. So I'd go, and unlike the airline industry, where you would have your very much a set roster, in that sector, you were of corporate aviation. You would, and I was flying for a company called Fox Air. So what happened basically was the flying school decided that they were going to get this aeroplane. They sent 4 of us off to Piaggio to do the type rating. I was really serious about wanting to, get this type rating and get through the course, and the other guys maybe weren't quite so serious. So they didn't achieve very much. But the flying school subsequently didn't end up taking an aeroplane. However, I was offered a job with Piaggio at the factory, which was amazing.
Oh, wow. They must have recognized some talent there.
Well, they were really nice people, but I worked hard. I worked really hard for that.
Good for you. Good for you.
So I remember now, and you'll probably relate to this, Nick, that there was a lot of ex-Air Force or Italian Air Force pilots within that organization. And the chief pilot, whose name was Giuliano Corrado, he was an ex-104 Starfighter pilot.
Oh, the Widowmaker.
Yeah. And then some of the other guys who were involved with the sort of production and the testing of the aircraft were ex-Italian Air Force Tornado pilots.
Oh, excellent.
So they were an interesting bunch.
I bet.
So that was a really good experience. So, there you would literally go on a tour. So you would take off from where we were, Genova and Bologna were the 2 bases, and we'd take off and we wouldn't know where we'd end up. I remember we used to fly the Ferrari Formula One people around. So at the time it was...
Oh, wow. Did you meet anybody interesting?
Yeah, I did. I flew Jean Todt, who was at that time the team manager.
Excellent.
So Barrichello and Schumacher were the drivers when I was there. So that
you
was...
met them both?
Yes,
oh,
we flew them.
Fabulous.
Which, I mean, you're not really meant to divulge that now, but it's a long time ago. So yeah, I'm happy to say that's what we did.
What was Shuey like?
He was very, 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 very lovely, but very quiet. but very studious and a real thinker. And at the time, I remember he was doing a degree, I think, in some sort of automotive engineering. So he had a big say in the design of the car and stuff, which is way above my head. And I do remember him saying, actually, if I can work on the design of the car with Ferrari, and I can just get even a 0.0001% improvement in the performance of the car, then that makes a big difference in his world. So they're really dealing with this. I mean, anybody, I'm impressed with anybody that's any good at anything, and he really was top of his game. So really quite inspiring.
So where from there?
So I realized then, having spoken to my friend who I went on the jump seat on the 747 with, he said, Ian, you need to get yourself into an airline. That's what you need to be doing. He didn't really understand the corporate world, and I must admit it's something which had never occurred to me, but it was very enjoyable and it was a great experience. But from there, I joined a company called Now Airlines. And they were based in Luton, and they had a very short existence. They made a couple of, I think you probably agree, schoolboy errors in that they were setting up as a low-cost airline from Luton, and they decided to lease 2 737s from EasyJet. So of course,
how's that going to work?
Yeah, exactly. So they never saw the airplanes. That whole thing just folded without even getting airborne. But however, that being said, we all went to a company called Globespan. They took us all en masse, which was a company based in Scotland. And I did some of the first flights for that company on the Boeing 737 there, the Boeing 737-300s they had initially. Then they had some Boeing 737-800s directly from the manufacturer. And that was great, doing the base training around the UK, just taking myself and a training captain, took this aeroplane out for the day, going around to a few airfields. I think we went around to Prestwick and down to Doncaster and back around, just doing the sectors. And it was really good fun.
I was going to say, that sounds like an absolute jolly.
Well, it was, you'd park up somewhere, go for a cup of tea and a sticky bun and jump back in your airplane, a bit like the days you did the Cessna 152 and all of that stuff. So that was a great experience. And then they also had an interesting airplane, actually, a Boeing 737-600, which was the new generation aircraft, but it was a very short airplane. Now, the problem with this airplane was that it had a toilet at the very back of the airplane, no toilet at the front. So, they always say, drink lots of water. And I remember, so I drank lots of water like a good boy. And I remember always waiting for the passengers to get off as soon as you'd landed, because you were just bursting to go to the toilet. So it was a bit of a trudge to the back. So I always remember that. But so that was a nice little airplane, actually, a little 737. But I think the 737-300 was probably my favorite of the 737s to fly. It was really well balanced. It was a really lovely aircraft. I always thought the 737-800 was quite twitchy in roll, and then the 737-600, being a shorter fuselage, was quite twitchy in pitch. Always took quite a lot of trimming for each power change.
Interesting, isn't it? So they flew quite differently, but I guess they're all on the same type certificate.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They're all a single type rating. And it was just the NG differences basically that you would do. But hey, it seems a long while ago now, because of course I'm a proper Airbus convert. So having that control column is very different to obviously having the side stick. And I remember at the time, how would I get on flying with a side stick? But it's quite, as you know, it's quite second nature very, very quickly, isn't it?
And it's great for long haul, that's for sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So was that airline going for a while? Did you stick with them?
I did, but I had an experience, and that was that I was still quite fond of the alcohol. And I was in a bar one night in Glasgow with my contemporaries, my colleagues, and I had a phone call. And my father was on the other end of the phone, and he said he was very upset and said, son, your brother has been in a car accident, and I don't think he's going to make it. And I sort of realized that emotionally and personally there was maybe some sort of issue then, because and it's really quite sad to say this now, but I didn't feel anything. I was happy to keep drinking. I didn't have any feelings or anything, it was really strange. But what?
So you didn't feel concern or worry or?
No, not at all. And I said to my friends who I was with, oh, that was my dad, who just said my brother's been in a car accident. And he said he doesn't think he's going to make it. And I was like, well, who's going to get the next beer? And it was really weird. My friends were there with like their jaws on the floor, and it was awful. The person that I turned into around that time, and then all would start to unravel, and I'd start to realize eventually what actually was going on.
So this kind of was a moment of realization for you. How were your relationships with your work colleagues going and everything like that?
Well, I was definitely Mr. Party Central, that's for sure. I mean, one thing I will say, and it is something which really does need to be mentioned, and that is that never at any point would I be on an aircraft unable to function.
Sure.
But I certainly spent a lot of my time off the aircraft, enjoying myself. And of course, with the condition, this condition gets worse and never better.
That's very interesting. Did your brother make it, first of all?
Yeah. Well, he was in a coma for 13 days. And what had happened was he pulled up to negotiate across a dual carriageway, and a car bashed into him from behind. He had the wheel turned, the steering wheel turned. So he then went into the dual carriageway, into the line of oncoming traffic, and the car then hit the passenger side of his car at about 60 miles an hour and pushed the A-frame of his car into his head. So he had epilepsy and all sorts.
Oh, good Lord.
And he was, it was, so lucky. And this was sort of the early 2000s. This happened, 2006, around there. Yeah, pretty horrific. So I just see him so grateful that he made it. But of course, he does suffer with epilepsy now and does suffer the emotional effects afterwards. And at that time, that really affected my parents. And my parents then, they were both diagnosed very quickly with cancer. So around that time, I decided to leave Globespan, and I applied for another job in my hometown, Birmingham. So I worked for Monarch Airlines, and I did the type conversion then to fly the Airbus A320, but mainly the A321 actually in Monarch in Birmingham, which was a new experience. But, as I said at the start of the interview, the problem is you can do all the geographicals. I can go to Scotland, I can go to Birmingham, but ultimately the problem will always be between my two ears. I'll always carry the problem with me. Or this, it is a problem, it's a condition. So I was working for Monarch, and even then, struggling to contain, that lifestyle.
Had you recognized the fact that you were an alcoholic at that point?
I since realized that I was an alcoholic. I was born alcoholic, and there's a couple of indications, and I truly believe this. And it's a condition for life, but it is a condition. It's a little bit like diabetes, that we can control it, but we can't cure it.
That's a very good analogy, and one that I considered myself. You're at a real turning point in your life here. You're back drinking, you're holding down an airline job, but you obviously need to change your life somehow. And I think we'll be able to talk about that at length next week, if that's okay.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, that's great.
All right, mate. Chat to you next week.
Brilliant. See you then.
I love this music.
Yeah, it's amazing that it was made. Sorry?
For a game, right? No, you were.
Yeah, it was. It was made for a Tomb Raider game. That was quite remarkable.
Okay.
Yeah, and
wow, this is a really fascinating interview.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It looks like we're completely out of sync. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Nev has just said what I was going to say, and how touching that Ian is able to be so candid in this series. Now, Nev has the video version of this, which he will be playing in PT UK later in the year. But so you can see this again if you don't catch it right now. But we've covered the build up towards what is going to be a very serious time in Ian's life. And again, I just applaud him for being open enough. And he is a current working airline pilot. So this is something he does in full awareness of what people might think of him. But he is a recovered, recovering. I don't think an alcoholic ever admits to being completely recovered. It is a continual process. And he is unbelievably honest about it, and we'll find out lots more next week.
Well managed, I guess you can say, right?
I tell you what, he's got my respect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, it's one of the reasons I like him so much, because he, from the moment I flew with him, he was just so open and honest about his life and what he'd done, and what he'd done to stabilize and make himself a person who we can now admire, rather than someone who we might have just turned away from when he was
Not only
and I can really see how being so open and honest keeps yourself honest in the recovery process.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It just keeps you honest first and foremost, and then you go from there. It's just absolutely great. Wow.
Absolutely. So the next one is the Cruncher. So do listen to that one. It's worth it.
If there's any reason to come back and listen to APG again, I know many of you are wondering. I don't know.
This was it for most everybody, but they're going to give next episode a try.
Yes.
Just because of this cliffhanger. So
thank you very much, Nick, for saving the APG.
Nick comes through in the clutch.
Yes.
Don't remind them that they can listen to it separately aside from this.
That's very true. Yes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Steph, we wouldn't say anything like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were being open and honest about things.
Not that.
That works. That works for Ian, but it doesn't work for us.
Sorry. Take it back.
Yeah. All right. Very good. I can't wait until next week's installment.
Yeah.
Part
it's
3.
a good one.
All right. Let's see. We'll move back into the feedback notebook here and attack number 9. Attack! Greetings, Captain Jeff and AVG crew. Well, you answered a question I had when you read the story about the flight of B-52s flying around Louisiana. I saw those planes, the pair of bombers and their F-15 escorts flying in wide circles around the area, and thought, wonder what they're doing. Now I know. Those must have been the flying salute planes. Now, jumping tracks, I've discovered on YouTube a channel called Mega Projects. It deals with a whole range of engineering subjects, but it recently posted a 2-part series on Concorde and Konkordsky, officially the Tu-144. I've seen a few videos about this I've seen a few videos about this, but this one had a couple of interesting tidbits that I hadn't heard of before, such as the Soviets attempting to get samples of Concorde's tire rubber and the counterintelligence response to that. Honestly, you could probably make an entire spy movie just about these two planes. Always enjoy the show. Best wishes with whatever your new wings wind up being. This is the Texas and LaShock signing off. The story about the Concorde and Konkordsky, that kind of sounds familiar. Maybe Nick, maybe you should do a plain tale about this.
Oh, damn. Yeah, if only I had and called it Charger and put it in the plain tales about 100 back, then people could have listened to it.
Yeah. Oh, wait, you did.
Even about the bit of disinformation they did concerning the rubber compound. Apparently, the formula that they gave to the Russians would have produced something akin to bubble gum. Would have been interesting.
Silly putty.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was something about the way the wing route, or that's not the right term. The way the wing went from the fuselage and then kind of formed an unusual pattern, and they were trying to figure out how to recreate that as well, but they did something to throw them off.
That I'm not too sure.
Oh, maybe
about.
that's just in my own mind then.
I think that's part of the there was a significant spiring going on in the European aviation industry. The Russians had a number of agents in place, and they leaked secrets about a variety of aircraft. But certainly, what you're talking about is the Ramshorn vortex that the shape of the Concorde's wing was able to produce, and it was a vortex of low pressure that formed at high angle of attack over the leading edge of the upper surface of the wing, which allowed this aircraft that really was designed at a very, very thin wing and designed to cruise at Mach 2. The way it got back to a landing speed was the fact, as the angle of attack built, so this Ramshorn vortex grew, and so it gave an aerodynamic lift device, as if, as it were, that allowed it to come back to a normal approach speed. It needed a very high nose angle, hence the enormous droop that both the Tu-144 and Concorde had, and various other high supersonic aircraft. But considering they did all this without the aid of computer design, I find remarkable. This was the days of blokes with drawing boards,
slide
liners, pens, pencils,
an abacus.
Exactly. Yep. I think fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Great admiration for those engineers and aerodynamicists.
APG 299, that was the show where that plane tail.
Oh, the one before 300.
Yes.
That was a great show, though, in Atlanta.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Definitely.
All right. Item 10.
Oh, Liz actually says she has a spreadsheet of all the plane tails.
Oh, she does. She's a spreadsheet ninja.
Wonderful.
She has a spreadsheet of all the mistakes I've made since she's been producer director with us. It's a very long document. All right. Item 10. Mark, classic example of the ignorance of news media. Hello, Jeff. Hope all's well with you and the APG crew. Oh, wait. You guys already practice social distancing as standard operating procedure for every episode you record. Anyway, I just wanted to pass along. That's the way I've been kind of employing social distancing from almost everybody in my life for quite a number of years. So this is like normal for me.
Lots of practice.
Anyway, just wanted to pass along another frustrating example. He says, frustrating example of how wrong news media gets it when it comes to aviation stories. This was on my Facebook timeline today. And then he has a picture of a jet, and it says, F-16 flyover Kenosha today. Wings over Wisconsin, F-16 fighter jets to honor healthcare heroes with flyover. Now, this F-16 apparently is a special model. It has twin vertical stabilizers and two engines.
Wow. The two-engine twin-fin F-16.
Wait a minute. This is an F-15.
Oh, and it's got twin intakes either side of the cockpit.
Yeah.
It's
F-15,
slightly modified.
F-16, F-80.
I mean, the 5 and the 6 are right next to each other on the keyboard. Can you blame them?
That might be a typo.
That's true.
Probably not a typo.
I wrote back to Mark and I said, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Wrong color.
Gray noisy thing.
Yeah.
As Captain Al would say.
Anyway, so Mark says blue skies. Mark fillet Ultragut, or fillet if you prefer. Item 11. Tom, this is good. Hello, Jeff and crew. Welcome back, Rick. I hope you are all keeping safe and well. Apologies, I'm a bit behind on episodes. Less driving means less time to listen, so I hope this email arrives on time. Before I get started, this isn't intended to be read out on the show. Yeah, unless you feel it would be useful to other listeners. Obviously, we did. But if you could forward this on to the listener in question, I would be grateful and hope in some way it helps. I was listening to episode 419 when some feedback from Sissy regarding her son Mike's reluctance to take the next step from PPL to commercial training caught my attention. During the feedback, there was mention of a $40,000 interest-free loan to be repaid within 3 years as if it was a great opportunity. At this stage, I found myself screaming at my iPad, which is not something I do often. Must be a symptom of prolonged isolation. Or maybe just general frustration. Being in a similar situation myself, I appreciated the advice that the crew gave. However, I do think one obvious and important point was missed. Such a big loan taken over such a relatively short time seems essentially pointless. If you honestly think you can afford to pay $13,000 a year in loan repayments, then it's surely better to not take a loan and spend that money directly on flight training or put it in a bank account where you'll be the one earning the interest. Conversely, if you can't afford to make the hefty repayments, then you definitely shouldn't take out the loan. Either way, that particular opportunity doesn't seem to make sense, especially since the loan period is pretty close to the time it would take to get from this stage in your flight training to the right-hand seat anyway. My personal opinion is that a loan for flight training should not be taken out based on a projection of what you will be earning as a pilot. Nothing is guaranteed, especially in aviation. We all know that. And as is true when flying, you should always have redundancy, an escape option, a plan B, and not base all your decisions on a single possible outcome, especially when that outcome is the best case scenario. Any number of things can knock you off track, so plan for the worst and hope for the best. The current global situation is a perfect example of that. But for someone in the early stages of training, I would try to turn it to a positive and view it as an opportunity to be patient, sit tight, and as Captain Nick often says, light a cigarette. Things could be hugely different in 3 years' time. Instead of a financial noose around your neck having rushed to join the sea of pilots now looking for jobs, you could have saved the money for flight training, be debt-free, and ready to launch into a recovering job market. As someone who had the realization of wanting to be a pilot relatively late, I understand the perceived sense of time pressure and the impatience of wanting to push on, but don't let that rush you into making bad decisions. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against loans altogether, and there are situations where they make sense. They can be a useful means of financial time travel, but they come with a risk which you need to be confident that you can spread comfortably. Hope that helps. Clear skies, tailwinds, unlimited visibility, Tom Harris. So, Tom, I thought that was very well put. Good advice, I think.
Very nice. Although I would like to say that I don't actually promote people taking up smoking, particularly youngsters like Mike. So let's just,
Well, he didn't say
Figure of
smoke
speech.
it. He just said light it.
No, just light it.
Light
Just
it
light
and
it and
set it aside.
hold it there and let it.
and lighting things, setting light to things on the flight deck is never a good idea.
Oh,
in
you
my
don't want to do
opinion,
that on
either.
the flight deck.
I've flown with a few of those.
What, flamers?
Yeah.
Smoker flavors.
I remember in Acme South, actually, the brand new FOs must have been, I don't know, 2003 or something. And this guy, this guy, he'd been around since the days of the DC-3. He was on his way out, and he asked me if I minded if he lit up a cigarette. And this is the director of operations. I'm like, what am I tell him? No.
Yeah, I mind.
Yeah, I do mind. So it's funny. He had one of the flight attendants bring him a few of those towels there, those hot towels for the passengers, and he stuffed the towels under the cockpit door, the crack of the door there, and the guy just lit away. Yeah, don't light up in the flight deck, please.
Yeah, that was one of those things that was kind of astonishing to me when I first started flying for Acme back in the late 80s. Smoking was still allowed on airplanes, and all of a sudden you start smelling a cigarette, you're going, what is that? What's that? Oh, captain smoking. Wow, that is weird. Very, very strange.
I mean, it's just it's becoming less and less common, so it always strikes me as odd now when I actually do see someone smoking an actual cigarette too, and not like just vaping. There was a lady in front of me in the drive-through line to get breakfast this morning who was smoking, and she was looking back at her in her rear view or in her side view mirror, and I think we kind of locked eyes for a second. I just was like the disappointed, shake of my head, and it definitely got her attention, but she didn't quit smoking.
Was that Steph's patented, bless your heart,
Yeah, it was my patented look of disapproval.
And you were actually closer than you may have appeared. So
Yes, yes. It's right there.
Bam. Rim shot.
I'll be here all week.
A little bit late, but deserved nonetheless. Yeah. All right. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Sure.
I think it's time. It's not me. It's you. Ahmad sends us some feedback. Hello, APGers. This time I'm sending my feedback in text form because, well, I'm at it again. That mind of mine is again wondering what? Wondering about the minimum speed needed for lift generation of wings. I hope the Wikipedia is available to help out with this one. Yes, we do have the Wikipedia present today. Let's see. Is an aircraft's stall speed also equal to its unstick speed? The speed on the ground just above rotate, at which the airflow around the wings is sufficient to generate the minimum amount of lift for the aircraft to get airborne? For instance, if an aircraft can start rotation to anywhere between 5 degrees to 7 degrees nose up at 90 knots indicated, but won't unstick or leave the ground until it attains a speed of 110, does this mean that if it is airborne, say anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 feet, it will stall clean if its speed drops to 110 knots indicated airspeed? My mind is split between this assumption and the assumption of, no, it won't, because during takeoff, the flap setting is always lesser than the flap setting required during landing, and therefore the clean stall speed, full flaps and gear down, would have to be less than 110 knots indicated, perhaps something like 90 or something between 90 knots and 110. This would be due to the lesser flap setting for takeoff generating less lift, but I'm about to play the crickets for myself, actually.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. But the least amount of drag possible compared with a greater flap setting for landing, which generates way more lift, but also way more drag than desired. Sorry, Rick, I know you're not able to follow along with this because you don't have access to this notebook at this moment. So I can reread anything that you need me to. But anyway, I think you get the gist of his.
Yeah, I get the gist of it. And I think, well, we know that if you double lift, you quadruple drag, right? So, velocity minimum unstick. Are you stalled there out? I would say no.
I say there's some kind of a margin above stall at that point. I just don't remember exactly what it is.
Because remember, all reference speeds for both big airplanes and small airplanes is based on 1.3 times VSO for takeoff and landing or VSI. So I'd say you're not stalled. I don't think what's your take on it? Because obviously center of lift is the wing is producing lift, which is why you're unsticking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So obviously there's that flow over the upper side of the wing, producing that differential pressure between the top and the bottom, which is allowing you to unstick. So if you were stalled, you wouldn't unstick. It's kind of how I'm looking at it here.
Yeah, I know that there's some kind of a safety buffer there because, let's say you rotate and you lift off and then all of a sudden you get a sudden gust or drop in speed, then, there's got to be a buffer there to keep you from just stalling at that point and coming back down. Dr. Steph, I think she has a master's in aerodynamics. So what would you say?
No, I don't.
I'm sorry.
And I will admit, as long as we're admitting things on this show, I think that's been a theme. I took a physics class that was not calculus based, so it was a little bit lighter on the.
Ooh, that sounds like my kind of physics course.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, you can take a physics class that's not calculus based. Yes, I would like that.
It's like color inside the line. So that was
basically, it was like we're going to do some practical experiments and show you how physics works, and don't have to explain it in great detail. So I'm just trying to make sure I really understand what Ahmad's question actually is here, because I think that's where we're all getting a little bit uncertain. So he's basically asking, you start rotation at a certain airspeed, so your VR speed, But obviously the main gear isn't going to lift off right in that moment. You're going to travel just a little bit further, have a little bit more speed before that happens. So I agree with you guys. I think there's going to be a buffer there. So when you come unstuck from the ground, that's not your stall speed. And it also does depend on your configuration of the aircraft. So like he mentions, he's saying clean stall speed, but I think he's actually meaning configured versus clean.
Yeah.
So certainly if your gear up, flaps up, it's going to be a different speed than full flaps, gear down, and all that'll be taken into account. But you're when you're stalling, you're still stalling for. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just putting my hand up for Jeff to pick me next. Me.
I was going to say I was going to transition. Or
I was hoping you were going to
into-
refute something that I was saying. That
No,
was incorrect.
no, definitely not.
Okay. So and then the other, I was going to say something else there, but now I've forgotten. I'm sorry.
And it was going to be awesome.
It was going to be great. I don't know. Go to Nick. It'll come back to me.
So I was going to say in my transition to Nick is that I've heard Nick say things like he really knew what he was talking about in previous episodes. And I think this might be another time where he's going to do that.
Well, what I am going to say is no, it's not the same speed. There are too many factors here that will adjust things. Now, let's assume you configure the aircraft while you're flying around in the same way you would for takeoff, and then do a power on stall. And that's another problem. You've got a power on instead of power off, which is actually quite hard to achieve, because if you're doing a full power on stall, the aircraft won't stall. You can't slow the damn thing down. So how do you actually simulate the same conditions you're at takeoff? It doesn't work because it's very hard to get the aircraft
you can do it in a light aircraft.
Power on in takeoff configuration, full power, and you still slow the airplane down without climbing.
Flight instructors help me out
So
here.
the thing here with VMU really is that you're basically balancing. You're right there at the cusp between the total drag produced by.
I'm going to say drag's got nothing to do with this. I'm going to say it's all about lift. So let's assume you can overcome drag with thrust, otherwise the airplane wouldn't take off.
Well, and
that's
also
that's where I was going. That's where I was going.
Okay,
but you also have ground
that's the
effect.
balance there.
Well, that's my next point. If someone will let me finish, when you're taking off, you're right there in ground effect. So you can get airborne and fly actually below the stalling speed of the aircraft in ground effect. And we've seen it happen in a number of crashes where you see people wallowing along. They're actually below the aircraft stalling speed, but ground effects helping to keep them airborne. You take it up a bit out of ground effect, and the airplane would effectively have been stalled. And the other factor is that we would consider for an airplane like an airliner is your stalling angle may be much greater than you can achieve when you're on the runway and you're trying to unstick, because you're limited by your pitch angle at that point. Whereas you get clear of the ground into clear airspace, you can pitch the aircraft much higher and get the airspeed a lot lower, because there's no risk of banging your backside on the ground. So you can get the aircraft slower, and there's a lot of factors like that.
Yeah,
sorry,
but
Dana.
Critical angle of attack is going to be the same whether you're on the ground. I mean,
yeah, but you
stalling.
can't achieve the critical angle of attack
exactly,
if you're only
because
pitching the airplane 5 to 7 degrees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was a
Dana.
Yeah.
What were you were saying something there too?
Yeah, I mean, ground effect in ground effect, obviously, as Nick mentioned, the stall speed is, you're well below stall speed because your parasitic drag and basically the distance, half distance of the wing to the ground almost acts like a cushion. So it's very easy to rotate the aircraft prematurely and get into a stall. But at that point, you are unstuck. So the other thing I was going to say, Dr. Steph, is in theory, you may be able to do what you're talking about, but you'd be dragging the ever living crap out of the tail.
Oh, well, sure. If you're on the ground still.
Yeah. You can actually find your.
I was thinking about practice.
Yes. Oh, yes. I've had a Piper Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a Piper Arrow, which is a high performance single engine retractable landing gear airplane in the Northeast in the wintertime flying backwards. It can absolutely be done because all you do is put your nose into the wind. As long as that wind is greater than your stall speed, you can sit there and go into MCA, minimum control airspeed, and just sit there and hover and fly backwards. So I absolutely agree with you.
Well, I've made the Phantom fly backwards. You point it straight up in the air, and then you close the throttles, and eventually it flies backwards.
That's just falling. Nick.
That's falling. That's a very
not
big
falling.
difference.
Yeah, but it's falling backwards.
No, that's falling down.
Sliding. We call that sliding.
That's sliding.
For a number of years now, work has been proceeding in order to bring perfection to the crudely conceived idea of a transmission that would not only supply inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal grammeters.
That's what I have to say.
Exactly.
I'm sure
I
people
concur.
find that very revealing.
I mean,
All right. So then, in answer to Akmal's question, stall speed.
I agree. I agree with the
Does
panel.
not
Is that
equal
it does not equal the unstick speed.
No, yeah.
I think it's generally lower than unstick speed.
Yeah.
All right.
And you know, Ahmed, a really good way to demonstrate that is exactly what I was talking about. MCA, minimum controllable airspeed. You can get like a Piper Warrior, you can get down to 45, 50 knots and just sit there and sit right on the stall warning, and just the airplane will buff it. Will continue to fly. So that gives you an idea that, all right, so when you're rotating a Warrior, which is usually 75 to 80 knots, pulling it off the runway, you know that's your unstick speed, right? That's kind of like your V1, and that's when you are pulling the airplane off the ground. Actually, VR. I'm sorry, V1's decision speed, VR. So your stall speed is well behind you, even with the taking into ground effect into consideration when you're unsticking.
Perfect.
Yeah, ground effect. Yeah, I was reading his question because I just got access to the notebook here. Ground effect is, as Nick was saying, ground effect is huge here because because basically ground effect takes into account the parasite drag. So parasite drag has to do with as you increase your angle of attack, your parasite drag vector increases because, as we said, an increase in lift also produces an increase in drag. As we say, you double lift, you quadruple drag. So while in ground effect, you're right in that cushion of air inside of 1/2 wingspan. That the overall drag due to that ground effect is lower, which is why once you get out of that ground effect, as Nick was saying, airplanes might be able to get off the ground and kind of waddle around in ground effect. Once you get out of ground effect, you lose that. And so the drag factor now is higher, which eventually will bring you back down. So I agree with the consensus here, but to the answer that we all reached here.
Brilliant.
Very good.
How many pilots does it take to explain?
Yeah, really.
All
How many-
speed.
But see that this is good stuff though, because you don't think about stuff like this.
There's a reason why we don't think about it.
Exactly.
Such an instrument is the turbo encabulator. Now, basically, the only new principle involved is that.
Okay. This has been fascinating.
My abs hurt from laughing.
Yeah, really.
Move on.
All right. Well, that'll teach you, Ahmad, for sending in a question like that. All right. Very, very unsticky question. All right. How about some more audio feedback? What do you think?
Sure.
This from South Africa.
Save us, Mike.
Yes.
Greetings, Captains Jeff, Nick, Rick, and Dana.
Wait a minute. That might be a little bit overmodulated. Let me try this.
Greetings, Captains Jeff, Nick, Rick, and Dana, and to Dr. Steph. Mike here from Johannesburg, South Africa. I've been listening to the APG since around episode 190, and I would say that there is little doubt that I meet the CDC criteria for the diagnosis of the APG syndrome. Unfortunately, go-around-a-cylinder has not yet been licensed by our version of the FDA, and as a result, I remain afflicted. Currently, we are sitting in the midst of one of the most draconian lockdowns in the world. We cannot buy cigarettes. Not that I smoke, mind you, or alcohol, which is somewhat problematic. And this has been in effect since the 26th of March. As I leave this feedback, it is the 15th of May. We've been confined to our houses, except for essential workers, and to get food, etc. I've spent many hours running around my garden with you guys in my headset, and I'm most grateful for the distraction. Fortunately, in the last week or so, we've been allowed out to exercise between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., when the virus is still sleeping, I'm told. Most concerningly, however, is the total ban on aviation. I'm a 200-hour private pilot who owns and operates a very yellow aircraft factory, Sling 4. I've included a photo in the email. The Sling 4 is a South African-designed and produced four-seat aircraft with a Rotax 914 engine, very similar to the 912 that Steph recently experienced in the Pipistrel. For currency and proficiency, I like to fly at least an hour a week. It's been 8 weeks since I last committed any aviation, and to be honest, I have concerns about how proficient I will be when this is all over. Anyhow, the reason for the feedback was to do some tweaking, and minor tweaking, in the region of about 0.1%, around the 50% accuracy rating that the Airline Pilot Guy Show has after episode 424, and the discussion about masks and oxygen. I'm an anesthesiologist, and at the simplest level, my job is about nothing more than the delivery of oxygen. Firstly, with respect to cabin altitude and susceptibility to hypoxemia, this is a function of the altitude at which one resides. In Johannesburg, we're at 5,500 foot above mean sea level, so the difference for us between ground level and the 7,000 to 8,000 foot cabin altitude is not as great. Because we live at altitude, our hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen at lower partial pressures of oxygen, and as a result, we can go higher before developing hypoxemia. We are acclimatized, if you will. Someone who lives at sea level will have, given similar physiological characteristics, a lower oxygen saturation at cabin altitude than someone who lives at altitude. To a large extent, this is what Dr. Steph was saying. I really wanted to flesh it out a little. At the risk of this becoming the Airline Hypoxia Guy Show, I wanted to also weigh in on the effects of face masks on oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. Something many folk fail to appreciate about a face mask is that it doesn't actually decrease the amount of oxygen available, because oxygen and carbon dioxide are such small molecules that they easily pass through all masks. However, the effect of a face mask may be to increase the work of breathing, which can cause one to feel as though there is insufficient oxygen. This is particularly true with the respirators, the N95 and equivalent masks, and this can become an issue in patients who have underlying lung disease, where they are already working hard to breathe without the mask. Interestingly, as masks become wet from condensation or contamination, their permeability decreases and the work of breathing will increase. The mask should not lead to the rebreathing or accumulation of CO2 unless it is poorly fitting. What do I mean by this? If the mask is not tightly applied to your face, then the air that you breathe out will stay in the area of the mask. This air comes from the alveoli of the lungs and is rich in carbon dioxide. It is similar to the air which is in the trachea and airways of the lung at the end of expiration. When we then breathe in, this carbon dioxide-rich air, which is admittedly a small amount, is the first air that goes to the alveoli, where it cannot take on any more carbon dioxide. This is termed dead space. If your mask fits loosely and is relatively impermeable, i.e. a homemade multi-layer cloth mask or an N95 mask, this will increase the volume of dead space and cause a small accumulation of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. Sadly, though, tightly fitting masks often cause people to feel claustrophobic and as though they aren't getting enough oxygen, whereas this may not in fact be the case. Captain Nick is of course completely correct when he states that the use of a mask is not for the protection of yourself, but for the protection of the others. And this is obviously in the public setting where the coronavirus is spread by droplets, which can be stopped by conventional masks. The general public should not be wearing N95 or equivalent respirator masks because these are only for the prevention of aerosol spread of the coronavirus, which is seen in certain healthcare settings. And in this context, are for the use of the protection of the wearer and not the surrounding people. Anyway, I hope it makes some sense and doesn't appear too pedantic. Thank you all once again for the great show and for being our companions during this difficult time. Clear skies and unlimited visibility to you all. Talons, Douglas.
Talons, Douglas.
Brilliant.
Wow.
I love that airplane. Isn't it great? It looks really smooth.
It's very yellow.
It is. It's
Very
a bit
yellow.
like Neville's car.
Not quite that bright.
The flying banana.
But no, it isn't his orange now, not yellow.
Yeah, it's gone a bit orangey.
Yeah. So what I didn't really catch what kind of airplane it was because he said it so quickly.
I wasn't familiar with it, and now I've forgotten the name of it.
Yeah,
which is terrible.
I didn't catch it either. He said it real quick with strong accent.
Here, let me replay the whole thing.
In. No, don't do that. Hold on.
Don't do that.
Talk amongst yourselves for half a second. I'm going to confirm what I think it is before I just speak with the.
Okay.
All I heard out of that whole feedback was Nick was correct. So I'm going, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Nick tuned out after that.
Yes.
Problem
I
is
think
that
they did say sling.
I got it below the 50%.
It's a sling for sling, SLING.
Okay. Sling 4.
I was going to call it a Swift, but I think that's
Yeah,
just
I remember it was like it started with an S.
I knew it started with an S. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the.
He's
I
left
like
the steps
the
down
canopy.
and the gear. I mean, what's wrong with him?
Should I? We're talking about this like everybody can actually see this, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Well, they could if you did some of your magic wizardry.
Okay.
And for those of you who are listening to the audio only podcast, this is a small single engine, low wing.
There you go.
Bright yellow.
Yeah. And he's flying
Nice
around with
big
his steps
canopy.
and his wheels down. Like I say, what's the matter? Come on.
He forgot to raise his gear.
Come on, Mike. Pull the gear up.
As we like to say in the general aviation world, down and welded.
That's right. Gear down, always.
Yep.
Down and welded.
All right. So that's a picture
That's a
of
gump
that
check.
Pretty
airplane right
Although
there.
you know what
pretty, isn't it?
This particular conversation was interesting to me too. That we had back at 424. I am going to when we go flying this weekend. So hopefully we should be up around 14,000 feet, but not in a pressurized cabin. So I will take my mask with me and my pulse oximeter, and I will let you know how it reads.
Do a little experiment.
I'll do a little experiment. Mask on, mask off.
Are you going to be by yourself or going to have somebody with you?
Oh no, I'm gonna have someone with me.
Okay. Well, can they take video of you doing this?
I'll take video of myself.
Okay, cool.
With her lips turning blue.
And then the airplane going
eyes
upside
rolling
down.
back.
Yeah. No.
Well, sadly, ladies and gentlemen, we lost Dr. Steph last week when she went out flying, but we do have video.
It was completely just due to hypoxemia. No other reason. No, I think it's all going to be just fine. And actually, I'll be surprised if it actually reads anything lower than 97 or 96%.
We might point out that Dr. Steph was the fittest person in the entire APG world.
Yeah.
True.
Come on.
Rick is.
And I did live at altitude for a number of years, even though I do not currently live at altitude now. I was wondering what kind of residual effect.
I spent most of my life at altitude.
In a pressurized airplane.
Well, yeah. 6,000 feet.
That counts.
That counts.
You know what I'm going to do? We're getting close to the end of our show.
Hooray!
And
Yay!
excited
See ya.
about that. Yay!
Brilliant.
But so we're not going to get to all of the feedback, but I thought we could quickly just talk about the 117 from Carl.
Sure.
I'm not going to play the video, but we're going to talk about it. This is primarily for Dr. Steph, he says. North Carolina is not only first in flight, but also first in having a female parachutist or parachutist. This link is to an old video interview with Tiny Broadwick, who ironically was one of the heaviest women ever to be in an no, not true at all. Tiny Broderick, who was the first woman to jump with a parachute. She was from North Carolina and made her first jump from a balloon in 1908.
Yeah, I do.
I didn't look at the video, so
I did. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh, okay. Tell us about
Absolutely brilliant. Such a condescending, and I must have picked the biggest reporter they could find to stand beside this tiny lady.
So she was 5 feet tall and 85 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
She
And
really
the reporter has to be about 7 feet tall. I mean,
interesting lady though. So she was, I think she was from Oxford, North Carolina, which is north of Raleigh-Durham area, like almost up near the Virginia border. Henderson, I think, is the other town up there. But she got married like really young, like 12 years old or something like that. And then she basically like ran away with these folks who were doing these parachuting acts out of hot air balloons. So she traveled around with them. And some of the there's some other photos that I've just looked up on the internet. Their gear for parachuting was quite interesting at the time. She was basically wearing this like life preserver design harness with the parachute attached to it, and they'd often just kind of sit on the strut of the airplane and have the parachute in hand, and then just jump back and let go, and it would open. So I think she's also the inventor of the static line, or the ripcord for a parachute. Yeah,
wow.
Very cool.
So
first in flight and first in dive
parachuting.
Cool. Well, thank you, Carl Klaber, for sending us in that information, and we'll have a link to the YouTube video where you can learn all about Tiny Broadwick yourself. And with that, let's wrap up the show. Thank you for watching, downloading, reviewing, all that stuff. You can find out the myriad ways of watching our show and consuming it by heading over to airlinepilotguy.com, which is our show's website. And there you can find all kinds of information about the crew, the community, got the community calendar. We have a library, the APG library, our librarian, Tiffany. We have a special standalone page for the Plane Tales where you can learn a lot more about each week's installment of the amazing Plane Tales. And we have merchandise and information about how you can join the financial backers of the show, the Coffee Fund Cadre, Coffee Fund information there, and so much more. Hey, we're on social media too, so don't you fret.
We're on Twitter. You can head over to twitter.com and we're at APG Crew. You can find all of our individual Twitter information pinned to the top of that page. And that's probably the best place to find out about when we will be recording live shows. If you prefer Facebook, it's facebook.com/airlinepilotguy. And if you're on the Instagram, it's at APG Crew. Mixing up my social medias there.
All right.
See you there.
And we're also on Slack. Oh boy. Wow. I guess need to turn
water
the
pressure's
down
up a little bit.
On
Yeah, got the power shower on.
Hello.
Yeah, he's using the elephant shower head this time.
Oh, wait a minute. That was the wrong one. Oh, well, use your imagination about something very clever he just said. And we're going to bring him over here, and he's going to tell us all about Slack.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plane Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Oh, thank you, Hillel. Thank you for not embarrassing us on this show. Close the door.
Oh yeah, Delta P.
All right. Well, I was wrong. He did end up embarrassing us. And let's see. Also, a big round of applause for our producer director Liz in the control room in Toronto, Ontario. Thank you very much for everything you do, Liz, and we really mean it. It wouldn't be the same without you. And until next time, wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Take care of yourself and your families.
What he
if I can get it out right. Take care of yourself and your families.
And get it out right.
I give up.
I could have fixed that in post.
No, you won't.
No, I could have. Didn't say I would.
I mean,
it's theoretically possible.
Hillel isn't getting it out right. He seems to catch it in his zip all the time.
Yes. Here, let me turn that volume up, and this is what he's talking about.
It's caught in my zipper, Jeff. Jeff, this is my private time. Whose hair is in my toothbrush, Jeff?
I'm not sure you heard that. Want to do that one again?
Sure.
Whose hair is in my toothbrush, Jeff? Would you let me finish a poo for once?
That and many more. Hillel recorded some extra ones for us.
Oh, boy.
No, wait, Jeff. I'm social distancing.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for. I'm offended. Okay, that's what I was wondering about. I saw iHaul boxes. They said that was terrible, and I'm thinking, oh, that reminds me of the Muppets.
Yes, exactly. Horrendous.
Horrendous. I got that somewhere.
Statler and Waldorf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shoot.
That was terrible. Horrendous. I'm offended.
I got it. I just have to find it. Jingle search. I probably named it Muppets. Let's see. No.
You have
I
too
don't
many
hear it.
sound clips.
I have an amazing amount of sound clips. Oh, you're not going to. Here we go. This has got to be it. Oh, I don't have room in here anymore. Okay, well, I know how to fix that. And and
That was terrible! Horrendous! I'm offended! I'm appalled! So what are we gonna do? Oh, what else? Email it to everybody we know. Good idea.
there you go. It's probably somewhere here in the soundboard. I just can't find. There are just so many clips. I just there's too many. I can't see them all. I wish there was a way. That's what I would do for this soundboard creator. It would be have like a search field where I could just do a quick search in the search field, and then it would kind of highlight the.
Yeah, it seems like
the
you should
clip.
be able to just like type in real quick, like the first 3 letters of whatever it is, and
See, the problem with this is that if the way this soundboard is set up, it's like you have hotkeys for everything. So, for instance, if I wanted to do moo,
Yeah, that's my family members. Sounds familiar.
Nice beaver.
Thank you.
My best
I
friend.
just had it stuffed.
so that's N for nice beaver.
That's not funny.
Or how about C? What do you think that does?
I'm
I hate to think.
not sure. I want to know.
Constipated. Crickets.
Oh, you guys have dirty minds.
Well, the first few things you played were not exactly clean.
What? No, yeah, they were. It's just your mind. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
right. Uh-huh.
All right.
We've seen those movies.
All right, guys. Hate to do this, but I got to fly. No pun
Sure.
intended.
Oh, really?
My buddy Dave, he's coming in from Florida.
Oh.
He's on a 5.7 at 40,000 feet and just about to begin his descent into Atlanta.
Oh, but you're not actually going to fly.
Yeah, I wish.
Okay.
I barely even know how to get to the airport anymore.
Going to pick
I
them up.
think you'll remember.
Yeah, I'm going to pick him up.
Nice.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
mate.
have a good
Love to
time.
see you.
Good to see you, Dana.
Good to see you
Say hi to
guys.
him for us.
Hey, Nick, I didn't get a chance to say it in person. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh, that's ever so kind of you. Thanks very much,
Yes,
Dana.
very
Appreciate
much.
that.
So, all right, guys, I'm pretty much free after Monday, I think.
Okay.
I am going to
All
try
right.
Yellow Slip something next week. I doubt I'll get it, but I'll try.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
Whatever. Good to see you guys.
Cheers, Dana.
Bye
Have a good
bye.
one.
Dana.
Cheers, Dana.
See ya.
And there he goes.
Sorry. That's badly timed.
Thought your mic was muted. Did you?
Oops, sorry.
It's that little button in the bottom left corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I never use that one. You know why? Because it mutes absolutely everything, including plain tales and anything else I happen to be playing. Learned that the hard way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. They're like, I hit that thing and then I hit the mute and I went off to go use the restroom and then go get something to drink. And then I came back with all these messages. Yeah, we can't hear anything. Huh?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. I was like,
What? Oh, I think I know
nothing
why.
happened. Nothing happened.
Oh man. Show title.
Sticky
Captain Nick is
landings.
asking about. Unstuck.
Unstuck.
Unstuck. I don't know.
Unstuck. That'd be interesting. I wonder what I could do for that.
There are lots of sticky images, I'm sure. Like gum on the bottom of a shoe.
On the bottom of your airplane as it's trying to
fly away.
Yeah.
Ricketts return.
Ricketts return. Yeah.
I was immediately thought about doing the picture of a poor child with rickets trying to run back towards it. No, and I'm thinking down.
Not good. APG descends into its what rating? Explicit rating, I guess. Is that what that is? I can't read.
It's under 18.
Oh,
or
okay.
not under 18.
It's so small.
Yeah. Over 18.
I can't really understand.
Yeah, the number underneath it is 18. Yeah.
Okay.
0 hour. What's that?
Neil was asking about what the movie that Airplane was based on.
Yep.
0 hour.
Didn't even notice that.
It's a great movie. Both movies. If you've never watched 0 hour, give yourself about an hour and a half and watch it. It's fantastic. If you're familiar with Airplane, you will know the entire movie, including all being able to quote it.
So that's the one that it's based on, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a
Mostly,
couple movies it's
yeah.
based on, but they took a lot of the dialogue
Some of the
directly out of this
airport
movie.
movies as well, but mostly, 0 hour.
I'll check it out.
Except it's not supposed to be funny, but it ends up
But
being
it is.
hilarious because all you can think of is how Airplane used it. and
It's like
totally
the director.
twisted it
It's
around.
not supposed to be funny. Damn you.
Yeah, it's quite good. Quite good.
That's good.
Medical aviation ignorance.
Funny?
Okay. Is that enough to work with, Nick? You think?
I got one. It's unstuck, but I can work with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us again. And if this is your first time here, I hope you had a good time. As you can see, it's a lot of fun hanging out with these folks in the chat room. At least it's what it seems. All right. And we don't know when we're going to be doing this again. Probably sometime next week.
Never.
Hopefully.
Okay.
No, hopefully we are. Not hopefully what Nick said.
Wow. Can you wait until we're not broadcasting to talk? Gosh, it's embarrassing. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hit the end broadcast button. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye, y'all.
Cheers, everyone.